Hey, good evening, everyone, and welcome to another Twitter Spaces with me, Kalu Aja. Every weekend we do a space and we talk money, finance, the economy, but we want to make it personal all the time that we speak. So we talk about how the economy affects your individual wallet. But this week we want to do a bit of macroeconomics, and if we could say sovereign macroeconomics, and the topic to me is very, very important, especially for Africa. I've been reading about China and how China has really, should we say, become this economic power, And if you are a student of history and you just look at the history of China, from their humiliation with the Opium Wars to Hong Kong to being a very, very poor vassal state, even as late as 1970s, 1976, China had a famine, like a real famine that killed millions of Chinese. I would say about the 1960s, 1970s, Nigeria, i.e., Nigerians, the people of Nigeria, were far richer than the people of China. If we measure that by GDP per capita, right? There's a map I did see that showed how many African countries were richer, again, by GDP per capita than the Chinese. But something really the Chinese have done since all those dire, statistics of the 1970s, as of 2021, China basically declared that they had eliminated extreme poverty in China. And we measure that by eliminating poverty, or should we say in terms of income. If you earn below $1.90 per day, that's the international poverty line defined by the World Bank, right? So if you earn below $1.90 per day, that's the poverty line. China essentially says we do not have anyone earning below $1.90 at all in the country, right? The Chinese are more than a billion. So what they've done in the last 40 years is that they've taken close to 800 million people out of poverty. 800 million. Let me put it in perspective for you. Nigeria is 200 million. If you want to argue 210 or whatever, what China has done is to take four times the number of Nigerians out of poverty. It's unprecedented. It's never been done before. It's literally a historic feat. Maybe we don't talk about it more because it's China and perhaps maybe they are communists, maybe. But I mean, whatever they've done, it needs to be studied. And so that if we understand what they've done, it helps us when we are, benchmarking and also advising our own individual government. This is what China did. So this is what we can copy from China. We're not going to copy 100% what China did. It's not possible because China has its own unique circumstances. They had a revolution, they have one party rule, they're a communist party, so it's top down, so you really can't copy that across all demographics and nations. But there's some things they've done on the economic side that I think we can copy and we can implement. It doesn't cost a lot of money. Remember, this was a poor country when China started this journey in 1978. They were a poor country. They weren't rich. They had no crude oil, that they could export and maybe a resource rich country. They were just like how we are now. Lots of people, low incomes, poverty, famines, like a real famine where millions died. That was China in the 1970s. So let's have a space and talk. And again, it's going to be, I'll just talk for the next maybe 5 minutes, just give you the intro, what I learned when I studied them. And if you guys want to hop in and talk, sure, request to speak and I'll add you. So the very, very first thing I did see that the Chinese did, let's explain the Chinese growth, what happened. China had tried this top down communist approach where they essentially said, this village or this state, you're going to produce cassava, you're going to produce maize, and we're going to give you a quota. But what they did was that because they were communists, everyone got a salary. So if you worked, you got a salary. If you didn't work, you got a salary. If you made 100 kilograms of maize, you got the same salary. If you made 1 kilogram of maize, you got the same salary. Everybody in China, i.e., the peasants in rural areas, all had land. Because of the revolution and they were communists, they gave everyone land. So almost 300 million folks had land. So they had land, but productivity was low on the land because they were paying everyone the same. So there was no incentive for productivity or for you to work hard. If you work or you don't work, you get paid. This is why they had the famines, right? Because there was no incentive to produce food in excess to feed all the Chinese. So they had all the famine. Then Zheng came in and said, that's the president, or I don't want to call them in China, came in and said, listen, we're going to change track. Across the street, the sea, they could see Hong Kong and they could see the lights of Hong Kong. And they copied from Hong Kong. They copied the capitalist intendencies of Hong Kong and brought a little. They did a little in China. And let me tell you what they did. The very, very first thing they did was to go back to the rural areas, to agriculture. And they started the revolution from agriculture. Why agriculture? Because agriculture employed 70% of the Chinese. So if they fixed agriculture, then they were fixing immediately a large part of the economy. They went for the big guy, agriculture. So they went in and how did they fix it? They basically said, listen, we're going to allow you, when we're communists, we agree, but we're going to allow you to produce more. And if you produce more than your quota, you can sell that quota and you can keep that cash for yourself. Remember, they were communists, so you can't have private wealth. But they said, we're going to change that. If we give you a quota of 1,000 tons of maize, if you produce 2,000 tons of maize, that extra 1,000 you can sell and you can keep. So what happened? All the farmers then, of course, went back to their field because there was not an incentive to produce, and they started to produce. And of course, the governments of China supported them with mechanization, and they started to produce in excess, and the surplus they were then able to sell. That created wealth, not at the cities, but in the rural areas. Remember that everyone in China had land because of their communist reforms. They then reformed the land laws. In Nigeria, we have the Land Use Act. In China, they reformed their land use laws and said, if you're not using your land, or if you don't want to farm, you can lease your land out to a farmer and get paid. So what then happened was that all those guys that got land because they were Chinese, because of the communist revolution that everyone owned land, they were able to give their land off to farmers that were professionals. And these guys were able to then farm on more land, produce more yield, produce more tonnage of food, sell the excess food, make money. And the guys that leased out their land to those guys were able to make income. In the communist nation, they were allowed to keep that income and to spend that income, right? So you can see the cascade of positivity here, where the government says we incentivize you to produce more, and you can sell or lease out your land and make more money because that you can do that. So they reformed the Land Use Act that was written in China. This is the key point, guys. This started in the rural areas, not in the township, in the rural areas. The government of China then focused on skill-based education. They literally, at a point, took the educated youth from the cities and sent them to the village, and they focused on skills. So it was, you were a farmer, they teach you how to farm. And literally, they would go out and give you, I'll give you an example of when I read the book, plastic sheets. They cover the land with plastic sheets so that the moisture gets retained in the land. So they use less irrigation and the plants can grow better and can have a higher yield. Something as simple as plastic sheets. They went from making plastic sheets and individuals who put them on, to animals putting those plastic sheets on, to tractors putting the plastic sheets on. You can see the productivity increases. So labor productivity increased in the rural areas, in agriculture, in China. That's how they first of all stopped the poverty and allowed wealth creation to start in the rural areas. It was only after this they didn't adopt this export-led economy where they went to their coastal cities and opened up these special economic zones that allowed foreigners to come into those special economic zones and set up manufacturing entities. And who are the guys that went to the coastal cities to work? The children of the farmers that already had the skills in the farm already had some wealth. So their children could then go to those factories and start to work already educated because the government of China educated them for free, did healthcare for them for free in the rural areas. So when they went to work in the factories, they were already semi-skilled and they were able to scale up the incomes they also earned in the factories. So they went from rural agriculture to agro-allied in the cities, but their urban to to township, should we say, migration was not chaotic because the villages were also developed. So if you look at it in Nigeria's case, people were not leaving to go from their village to Lagos because their villages had no light or no power. No, people were leaving to go to the coastal cities because there was more income, yes. But even if they stayed in their village, they could still farm, make a living, and make a good wage. So that controlled the urban, rural drift in a way. And China was able to control that drift to the coastal towns where they had set up dedicated export clusters. And from those export clusters, they also improved their manufacturing productivity and efficiency. And of course, did backward integration back to the rural area. So you can see that cycle. The rural areas started, they sent workers to the coastal areas. The coastal workers learned new Western skills and took it back to rural areas. And in China started what we call the CEZs, where they then had in the villages factories set up that copied what the Western companies were doing on the coastal side of it. So land reforms, agricultural reforms, even taxes. The Chinese essentially said before 1978, the main source of Chinese revenues were taxes on the land. Yes, they were communists, but they were taxing the workers and the peasants. After they had the revolution, they basically said if you are farming and you are working on land, they eliminated those taxes. So they removed the government focus on just earning an income from the yield of the farmers. This allowed the farmers to produce more and incentivized them to stay in farming. They produced food, then went to agro-allied, then went to manufacturing from the coastal cities. That was the plan that they did, guys. There are many things you can then start to talk about from what happened in China after they had the clusters coming to the coastline. But the main thing that I want to hang on is this focus on the rural areas. The rural areas, that's where they started from. The focus on agriculture, the focus on education, and of course, land reforms. They just didn't do, we're going to buy a tractor and give you as a farmer in your village. They reformed land. So, land for the Chinese farmer was a productive asset as well as stability. So, the farmer owned the land. In Nigeria, no one owns land. But in communist China, they allowed the farmers to quote unquote own the land. The farmers could lease out that land. So if I owned land in my village in Ohafia and I wasn't going to farm, I could lease out that land to a farmer. The farmer would farm and pay me a dividend, and the Chinese would not tax me. So there was an incentive for me to either farm or to lease out my land. Then the guys that were doing the actual farming, the Chinese then supported them with infrastructure, with education, with healthcare, and of course with political stability. And then they focused on agriculture. Once they had achieved a level of poverty eradication using agriculture, they then moved into the manufacturing that we then see China become today on the coastlines, where they had the foreigners coming and set up joint corporations on the coastlines, where they now copied. Remember, the Chinese were able to copy because they were educated. So the guys that were working in those factories were educated already in the villages. They were not villagers, in quote. They simply lived in the villages. It's a different scenario when you were a villager, say in Nigeria, and you then move to work in say Nestle's factory in Ogun State, What are you going to learn? How do you understand how those machines work? You don't know anything. You don't know physics. You don't know biology. But the Chinese guys that worked in, say, the Nestle factory and the coastline already had an idea of physics, biology. They were already educated. They were already not in extreme poverty. So it was easy for them to pick up those things, set it back to rural areas, and create their own Nestle in their own village. That's what I want to focus on, the rural, the agricultural, and the land reform. I think that was the key to China taking, and again, this number is mind blowing, taking close to 800 million people out of poverty. It's unbelievable. 800 million people from 1978 till 2021. Unbelievable and unheard of. And there's a template for it. So, guys, hop in if you have a comment or you want to clarify or you know a lot better than this. I'm basically just amazed at what they did. And really, what I want to go for is this: what can Nigeria or Africa learn from what China did? What are we getting wrong? You know, a long time ago, Nigeria had DFRI, where we tried to industrialize our rural areas. But we still have Land Use Act in Nigeria as a big stumbling block. And we've seen how China has so what's the word that they've deregulated land ownership in China. This has paid dividends for them. So let's just talk around it. I think it's a very, very good topic for us to talk, even as we are going to go into this year. And I think it's going to help us a lot. Lucky, you've got the floor, sir. Go ahead.
Hello, how are you guys doing?
Hey, Lucky, how you doing?
I'm
Good to have you
fine. I'm
here.
very good. Yes, I like key insights like this, and the devil is in the details. And I think um, there's everything we can copy from China, everything they did to grow. And right now, we are in the level that you don't really need to innovate or invent your development model. You can always copy. And Nigeria has, we have land mass, we have everything, we have oil, we have resources, we have minerals. And this land reform act you talked about will really go a long way if we implemented it. Because if you check some states like Ondo, that they have bitumen and everything, it's just there wasting because the state can't use
Yeah,
it. And the federal government is not yet ready to use it. But if it was
yeah,
this kind of usage, like, okay, I can list it to a company to come and explore the bitumen there or explore maybe
yeah.
the oil on my land, it will have been much better and income will have been generated. And with this, also their education platform is very nice, very, very good, very fantastic. Because I work somewhere that is quite rural. I would just say it's rural. I would say it's rural. And I see how they function there. First of all, their income is very low. Income level is very low. And you I work with electricity distribution company, so we try to go and build these guys, and I see that they can't meet up with your bill. And why is that? There are farms now that they even work to get something substantive. The herdsmen have overrun them. So
Yeah,
you find out that if they can start from there, from those villages, because you have all this when we were young, we still, I think till now, we still have people that will say Olowo Koko. In Yoruba, that's Olowo Koko. Like people that are rich off cocoa, they are these rural people, they don't go to school. Olowo Cashew, there are these rich people of just these little businesses. And if that kind of thing can still come into play, where we educate them or educate their children, and they come to work and they still bring their development back to the villages, I think it will be much better for us. Because right now our cities are populated, highly populated and dense, and most people have nothing to do. That's why you have so many touts running helter skelter, just wasting away. Meanwhile, if there was a model of production or model of development, everybody will have followed that model, because at least we copy things. So that's how human beings are. We copy a lot of things. So if there was a model where you have to work here, you have to be here, you have to be like this, no matter how your personality is, you will go through that model. And I think it has worked for them. I think it can work for us. So I just said I should just hop
yeah.
in. Thank
Good
you
point. And
for
again,
giving me the floor. Yeah. Bye.
you're fine. And the point is, again, this was not trial and error. You know, they had a plan
Okay.
and they would test it. They would test in one village. If it works, they implemented across all all of China. You know, they had a very, very good model and they controlled how people left the villages to the towns. They made sure they were educated, then they let them go to the towns. So it was those were the things that they had that we can't copy, but still, there are a lot of things we can copy from China. Like I said, the Land Use Act, the focus on agriculture, the starting point from the rural areas. This is the things I think we can really copy from them. So Lucky, thanks a lot. Let me get Leguda. Let me get his name. Um, Legu, Lengundum. Help me out.
Yeah, Lengdu.
Lengdun.
Good
Hi.
evening.
Good evening.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you for hosting this. Like you've already established, China is a fascinating study because of where they were coming from and how they were able to lift people. And it is totally incredible that this is communist China. I mean, communism is supposed to be against all of these things that China adopted.
True.
But the leaders were practical. They were pragmatic people. They realized that this is not working. That is the point that Nigeria has refused to arrive to. Its leaders has refused to arrive to realize that whatever economic model we have been trying to do is not working. And like you pointed out, it was capitalism that they imported. One place that we can copy them is in the area of their currency. So sometimes in 1982, Milton Friedman, the popular American economics, sent a letter to the Chinese Communist Party telling them that actually reducing, allowing the market, the Chinese renminbi to have a free flow in the market is going to be actually better for China. And they followed his advice. They actually allowed the market to determine the rate of the renminbi. So while at that point the Chinese currency was really lower compared to the dollar, and it was a kind of complaint, but it was actually good for the Chinese economy because it allowed people to export and to buy Chinese product at a cheap rate.
Yeah.
And then that's how China was able to base its economy on export. And because the money was cheap, people in America and all the European countries were buying this product at a very cheap rate. So many companies moved their production into China. And this is the opportunities Nigeria has. But every day you have CBN governors spending billions that are trying to protect the naira. For what?
I think you hit a
And
good point. You hit a fantastic point there. That I make this argument all the time on Twitter, sir, about this strong currency thing. You ask Nigerians, do you want a strong currency or a weak currency? Everybody says we want that to be strong. We want to, and I say, do you understand what you're saying? That there is no Google it now, everyone. There is no nation today, Google it, that wants a strong currency. Literally, if you make your currency weak, literally, right, America will sanction you. Google it.
true.
Vietnam tried to make that currency weak. America sanctioned them. Same thing with, is it India or so? If you try today to weaken your currency artificially, America will sanction you. Same with China. America calls China a currency manipulator because China has given their currency artificially weak. So someone's going to say, what of Nigeria? Remember, the word is if you artificially make your currency weak, the naira is weak on its own.
It
So
is
we're
weak
not
on
we're not making it artificially weak. The point, if you artificially make it weak, that's to show you how good it is.
yeah. True. And then the barriers that we have. So one example that I was looking at is the example of yam. Nigeria has a unique position in yam. I
Mm,
mean, we're actually the largest producer of yam all around the world.
yeah.
But what is stopping the barrier to export of yam is actually the cost of exporting the yam itself.
Wow.
And that's because of our currency. And then there was a law that Shehu Shagari signed during the 1980s or so. There was a time Nigeria was having a food problem, so they believed that banning export of several food items was going to be the best. And so Nigeria banned the export of yam.
Mm,
Until date, no one has gone ahead to look at these laws. So, but what China did in its period of developing was to remove all of these barriers.
sure.
They allowed people to literally, I mean, just like you explained, if you can be able to produce more, export it. And the government was actually intentionally helping the people to export their products.
Mm, mm,
And then they made the import of technology so easy.
mm,
Nigeria today, I mean, there's this company called Tomato Jaws, which is based in Kaduna. They
mm,
were complaining that they were buying some items before the CBN came and put some ban on so many forex issues and all of that. The cost of the machine that they were importing rose by 8 times.
mm,
Like 8 times. So if you're buying something for 1,000, the price was 8,000. It wasn't that the cost of producing the item in that country increased. No, it was that Nigeria put some laws that made the importation of this thing more difficult.
mm. Crazy.
And these are the simple things. These are the simple things that Nigeria can actually copy. This one doesn't even need. We don't even need money to. We don't need money to deregulate our naira. We
Right.
don't need money to remove some bills. We don't need money to allow people to pursue their inventiveness. I
That
mean,
is
look at Nollywood, look at music industry, look at telecoms, places that
good. Good.
deregulation is very low. Those
Good point.
places are thriving.
Yeah, good point on that. I mean, I want to keep you to keep on talking. I want to get others in here, but I think you made some fantastic points. I mean, the key word for China is that they are flexible. This is the communist nation adopting
Mm,
a capitalist structure to create wealth and reduce poverty for their people. That's again the key thing we want to understand. Like the president of China said, it doesn't matter if the cat is white or black. Let it catch. That's the key word.
true.
Yeah, let it just let Nigeria work. Whether it is APC, PDP, Labour, Hausa, Yoruba, Igbo, let the hospitals work. Let food be cheap. Let's just do that one. Then we can move on. Neka, how you doing? You've got the floor. Go ahead. Thank you.
I'm doing well. I'm doing well, Mr. Carlo. Thank you for holding this space. This is actually something I'm really interested in. So recently, can you guys hear me? Let me just
Yes,
confirm
I
that.
can hear you. Go ahead.
Okay, great. So recently, I read an article like for one of my MBA projects by Yi Wen called China's Rapid Rise from Backwards Agrarian
Great book.
Society.
Great book. Read that book. Great book.
I read it and I was mind blown, and it has actually affected the way I went back from reading that and a couple of research, and I formed a group with a couple of people from my local government. Our aim is basically that we want to invest in our local government. We already know that whatever is going on in the southeast is going on. I'm from Imo State, and we know that the government is not exactly looking at us right now. A lot of us do philanthropy in our communities, but we mostly do food philanthropy. People share a bag of rice, people share 5K and kill cow during Christmas. But that thing is temporary. It doesn't feed people for more than a day or a week at most. So my question is, how can interest groups or individuals implement this China framework in our communities? I am already trying to draft a framework, but obviously somebody like you with the expertise that you have will probably be able to give me clarity. We're trying to do something in our community that in 5 to 6 years we'll be able to have export ready products coming out of our community. So how are we going to be able to do that in your opinion?
Yeah, so
Thank you.
Neka, see, the one thing the book you named by Mr. Lane, excellent book. Also, this World Bank article, 4 decades to eradicate poverty on China. Excellent article again. If you can read it, those books, I'm going to put it up on the chat. Try to read them. One thing I see, Neka, is that this is basically a top-down and, should we say, different strata of integration. It's not something the local government alone can do. It's something that the federal, state, local, and then even the civil society and individuals together with a common purpose do. I give an example. We talked about land use act in China. The federal government owns land, right? So to implement what's done in China, you really can't in Imo State because you can't lease land the way they've done. But what we can do in your local community in Imo is to say, go to the Nigerian Export Promotion Council. They will tell you, right, what products are exportable, what products countries need. For instance, if you say you want to export palm oil, they will tell you what countries want the palm oil. If you say, okay, I don't know what to export, but what should I export? They'll tell you in this state, this is what you have, this is what you should export. So walk back from the answer. What is the competitive advantage your community in Imo has that they can export? If it is vegetables, what is the value chain to export vegetables? If you go again to the Nigerian Export Promotion website, they will tell you, you see many various links there, what countries want vegetables, how the vegetables have got to be packaged, i.e., you can't use this chemical. They will tell you. They will tell you who you can export it through, what it will cost you. Everything is there. This is a Nigerian organization, Nigerian Export Promotion Council. They will list everything for you. So if you guys say we're going to export vegetables, what vegetables? To where? Is it to Canada? How are you going to pack it? Where would you ship it out from? How would you do the cold chain? Who will receive in Canada? You have to do your own study on all this. Once you get that value chain, the next question is now who is going to finance this? Is it individual? Is it cooperatives? Igbos do a lot of cooperatives, town union. So if you come and tell me in the town union that, listen, we have this business line that we can package vegetables. The women will bring vegetables in the village. They will cut them and wash them. We'll record them. We'll weigh them according to international standards. Then we'll package them. Then somebody will take it from the village in Imo State to either Port Harcourt or Lagos. It has to go by air. Put them in a plane, in a cooler, and ship it to whether it's UK or to Vietnam or whatever. And it will go to this shop. And within 3 weeks or 3 months, we will get paid dollars in UK. And that dollars is now for the cooperative to share. So everybody contributes into that cooperative. Everybody shares from that cooperative. It's something you can do. Literally, it's something you can start and do. The value chain you can create. There are Igbo, there are your village. There are people that live abroad. So ask them, what store will buy this vegetable? Send small sample to that store. Would you buy this vegetable? There are lots of foreigners here. If we send you if this stuff to you, would you buy? This is done by women in Africa. So you have to use those things that they like to hear. Women in Africa, women empowerment, labor right protection. Where every pound of vegetables you buy, we're going to build a school or we're going to educate a girl in Africa. This is how you have to speak to those foreign markets, right? And it's not difficult to do. Ebano has a shop in Canada, right? Hook up with Ebano. Can we supply to you? Can we? So the women are cutting the vegetables, they are washing, they are packing. You have your website, you have all that stuff in there. You are exporting vegetables from Nigeria to the UK. There are Nigerians there. There's no pepper, even pepper, dried fish, all this stuff. So, like I will say, start, make the mistakes, learn, write out what you are doing, try to document and institutionalize what you are doing. Once you have a template, you even make more money now becoming a consultant. So other villages can come to your village and learn how you guys are doing it. You have to start and then take it from there. If you want to come offline with me, I'll hook you up with an exporter that does this. He'll give you guys the practical steps on how you can, what you want to export from that. Is it cashew or whatever, and how you can take it to a place outside. Yeah, so come offline to me, DM, I'll hook you up with that guy.
Thank you, Mr. Carlo. I'll definitely come offline. I
Don't
mean,
worry.
this is something I've been trying to wrap my head around, and you've given me direction. I really appreciate that. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Hey, Teke, you got the floor. Teke, what's up with you? Take a corner.
Hey, Mr. Ajad, thank you, Kala Ajad. Thank you for holding this space. I really enjoy your submissions. Can you hear me?
I can hear you very well, sir. Go ahead.
Okay, great. Okay. So I'm going to give you my submission from, advice and frustration,
Mm-hmm.
right? And from a very, not from a theoretical point of view, but from a practical point of view in terms of my current experiences.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I hear what you're saying about China, and I've been studying China myself. I'm a diaspora. And I've been looking at this, and I've always asked myself for the last 6 years going now, why can't Nigerians enjoy something as simple as fresh milk? That's what got me into this whole thing, agriculture, about 6, 7 years ago in Nigeria. And
Mm-hmm.
because of that, I've been going around doing a lot of things. So I said to myself, okay, we the Nigerian diaspora community down here, there are some diaspora community in the diaspora community in the DC, Washington DC area in the US. There are some of them that have never eaten a burger. I mean, the last time they ate a burger, they can't even remember. It's like, I don't know what it tastes like. Because from the day they landed the plane, it's either jollof rice, swallow. The Nigerian foods that they came with lasted them for like 2 years before they started going to Nigerian stores. And
Mm-hmm.
Nigerian stores here are doing fantastically well. But I met one of the biggest distributors of Nigerian foods. He distributes all the grocery stores, African grocery stores. And I was curious about a particular protein that we consider a delicacy that is not really a delicacy, but it's considered a delicacy because of the scarcity and the cost, which is snail meat. I said, Oga, you used to bring in snail meat. People used to come and buy from you. But all of a sudden, I don't see it anywhere. Why? What's going on? The man complained bitterly. It started with the yam thing, it started with Nigeria frustrating him and almost making him bankrupt. And now everything he imports from his store, 90% of them are coming from Ghana. They are all Nigerian made, but they smuggle it out of the country, not smuggle, but they go through the border by road, go to the Ghanaian port and ship it from Ghana because Ghana is almost perfecting the food export business. And so, but Nigeria, the frustration level could actually make you bankrupt. You will lose your money, lose your house, and lose your health because it's going to send you to the hospital. So he said the problem he's having is that, look, he cannot find the quantity he needs and he cannot find consistency. Like the first two batches he receives from his suppliers are all well and good, but the next batches is all a jumble and mixed bag, and it's just so the customer complaint was too much. And he said the headache from the customer complaint does not warrant him continuing in that. And that gave me kind of confidence that, okay, because of my whole, I had drawn up some kind of workflow because I really don't like the fact that snail meat is that expensive. And I wanted to say, okay, I need to do something big to crash the price of snail meat. And so I said, before I do that, let me do a pilot project and see what it really means to have something like that. And my brother, operating in Nigeria is a nightmare. From the government, from the banking system to the policies that exist. And I am operating a business account. And while things were going well, I was trying to figure out things and everything. There were a lot of monthly charges that were coming out. I was like, monthly charges is becoming equal to civil salary that I'm paying. So I said, okay, let me take part of this this funds I'm putting for operating expenses because I funded the account to an extent where in a year or two I will not even need the funds. I said, let me look for somewhere it will yield better interest. And I remember back in the day when the new and this current administration came in and all the I don't know what to call them, the tech and agro allied consortiums came in play. One of them is Farm Forte, you know, and all of those companies. And I said, okay, fine. Let me park some of my money in Farm Forte. It's not doing anything for 1 year. Let me buy one of their products and maybe in that 1 year when the thing has matured, I get interest back actually to actually help me pay salaries going forward. The Edo State governor switched party to APC. Before you know what's happening, one policy came out, Camp Forte cannot pay out its dividends anymore.
I mean,
Nigeria.
okay, I want you to land the ship. Yeah, I hear where you are going.
The frustrate the problem. Okay, landing the ship. The problem is not it's not whether Nigeria can make this happen. The problems are or is the environment that Nigeria continues and stubbornly refuses to adjust itself to allow capital and business and mechanization in this in particular industry to grow. What can be done? I mean, you do what you have to do as an individual, but then the government comes in and mess you up.
I hear
What path can someone take where sanity can actually bring that revenue in?
I hear you, take care. You see, one thing why we're doing this space, it's again for we want to talk, we also want to give solutions. People on this space do listen. Many people here know someone in government. So many times I try to say, yes, complain, but let's try. Let me put this way, right? The problem with Nigeria, doing business in Nigeria, again, is this issue of standards. When I was talking to NEC, I said document and institutionalize what you're doing. In China, what they did in the rural areas was they would do a model test in one local government. If it works, they document it, they bring people to that local government, learn, then they go back to that government and they do the exact same thing, documented. I see lots of on Twitter and Instagram. You see lots of Nigerians that do these cooking shows. Watch a Nigerian cooking show and watch an American cooking show. What do you see? you see them saying you take 2 tablespoons of salt and you put. Nigerian will say you put salt. You see them saying you take 2 pounds of meat and you put in the soup. Nigerian will say you put meat in the soup. What am I saying? We don't document, we don't institutionalize, we don't record things. The issue you are talking about, Teke, is very correct with the quality of exports. The guy that exports yams from Nigeria told me yams are banned in Nigeria. So what does he do? He comes to Nigeria. Nigerian yams are the best in the world. So he will come to Nigeria, cut the head of the yam. He cuts the head of the yam, takes it to Ghana, plants the yam in Ghana, then exports the yam from Ghana as Ghanaian yams. They are actually Nigerian yams. Because when he tried to export Ghanaian yams, they didn't sell as much opposed to Ghana. The Nigerian yams were the best. So he can't export Nigerian yams. Those same yams are being exported from Ghana, recorded as Ghanaian yams, but they're actually from Nigeria. Why? Because of what Lenuga said. We don't have a policy that supports that export. So you are completely correct. If you try to buy things from Nigeria, the quality goes up and down because it's not this is our own fault, right? We don't document and insist on standards at the local level compared to what they do abroad. A long time ago, I think till today, we can't export cocoa and some things to the EU because we use chemicals to spray. If you go to that same site, the NEPC site I was talking about, you see it right there that these items are banned from Nigeria because we use so and so things to spray. They don't want us to spray chemicals, or we didn't do it the right way. So again, it's the education that we are getting wrong to teach Nigerians the very basics: how to package, how to label, how to maintain stands in the factory. Today, NEPA goes off, so the quality of product goes down. Or your workers, you hire people and they japa or they go to work in the bank. So you lose that knowledge that you have passed along. You are completely correct, but I think one thing we have to do is to crack the code of documenting. And I will say to NECA, like I'm saying to NECA, right? Target the old women in the village, the ones that are going to stay there, and teach them how to do this because they will stay. And then when they stay, they then get that manner that they can then teach others that come after them. Younger people, and I'm saying this openly, younger people tend to move. So if you teach them this, they will move and take that knowledge with them. Try to look for sedentary workers that you can teach this and they can stay and learn. Take it, you're correct, but we gotta just move. I don't know what to say, but that's a big problem in Nigeria. Standards, documentation, and institutionalizing quality is a big fail in Nigeria. Olumide, what's up, sir?
Yeah, thanks for having interesting conversation. I just wanted to drop some nuggets and wanted to make the solutions more expansive. You dropped some key nuggets, particularly on how the Chinese have been able to break the poverty spell. When you highlight the fact that the way they grew agricultural productivity, the progressive industrialization, and the rapid urbanization with infrastructure investment, there's something missing a lot of people look at that they forget from the picture. And that's why we're so concerned with the Nigerian political system, competence, and the level of education. There was a point, if you look at we call them the Politburo, the most powerful government officers in China, all of them were engineers. And, it was so unsurprising for you to see the level of modernization and the way these guys apply their business. Also, secondly, it's another thing that's really eating us, that we really need to know: patriotism. I'm in diaspora. I've been, and despite the fact that most of the opportunities I've had been away from the country, one of the things I've learned by many Chinese in diaspora is that they have this patriotic sentiment to do something for their country. So I've worked with so many of these guys that for me to get this with them, I have to do something for the Chinese. And that's how it's done. So they have something to pay. They have excuses. China is a bit corrupt too. They have excuses. They can also say that the government can be very suppressive. They don't have liberal rights. Even we are kind of freer than Chinese. But that patriotism is there. Then another thing again that really bothers me and that we often skip is the fact that We don't understand how these guys grew so fast. So if we look at the fact that yes, they did all the things we mentioned: infrastructure investment, manage and fast, rapid urbanization, progressive agriculture. That still doesn't give us the key, because we need to understand at some point millions of people were dying. They took in aggressive policies. I think that's one key word: aggressive. And when we mean aggressive policies, they shut their country down. They had timelines. They met those timelines, and there was a reward system for meeting those timelines. And that's what we don't see in Africa. We speak about the fact that different policies, 2030, 2020, 2050, we've not seen those. Then the last one before I drop the mic: finance plays a big role in our market. I like when you mentioned, Kai, when people used to say they want a strong naira. You can't really blame people, because the level of penetration of financial education is very, very low. The average Chinese understand what the derivative market is. The average Chinese man has an option trading account. The average Chinese man knows how to hedge some risk. The average Chinese man knows, Vancouver, you can get more expensive house in Vancouver than going to the suburbs in Canada. They know all these things. So it makes it so easy for them to be able to hedge their funds and things like that. And that's why we see companies like Louis Vuitton doing big, because the purchasing power of these Chinese are becoming big, and they've been able to produce a lot of people. So I think we also need to talk about education, personal finance education. Yes, government is doing, but the desire for education is very low. If you make a tweet, like I read a lot of your tweets, Carlo, and I do a lot of finance related tweets. If you do a lot, you hardly see those tweets trending. But if you make a gossip space tweet, like for example, now you are doing a gossip right now, you see 20,000 people here. So it tells you a lot about the country, that the desire, we just talk, the desire is not really there. The drive is not really there. And until we don't have those things, there's little we can do. The likes of Ngozi Iweala, Aruma Hotel, the additional, they've done what they can. But the truth is that this generation, we are not spurring that aggressiveness. And until we have those aggressiveness, I'm very pessimistic that we can get the solution the Chinese did.
Thanks, Olumide. I mean, again, great points there. It's not a remember, China did a lot of things, and we're seeing the results. So we're not going to we can't copy everything they've done. Remember, they are communists, but like I said, the template for China was this: education. All the kids, I'm not talking about all the kids, were educated. The communists made sure the kids were educated. Number two, healthcare. Number three, shelter. They made, first of all, made sure they had this level of every kid had a home, he could eat, and the kid had a home. Then they focused on the rural areas. They didn't go to develop Lagos. They developed Eko, the Badagry, the Ekpe. They developed the rural areas first. They made wealth start from the rural areas. So those kids did not have to go to Shanghai or Lagos, Abuja, or Port Harcourt to get a job. They could get a job in the rural areas. Doing what? Doing agriculture. So they didn't export. They first of all started with making food cheap. Then they did agro-allied. They did the mechanization first in the agricultural sector. They revamped their land use that gave everyone right to land. And they said, if you don't want to use your land, you can lease your land out and make money from the land. So land became a savings account, also a defensive asset for every Chinese. In Nigeria, how many Lagosians even own, not, I'm talking the owner, the Yorubas in Lagos, how many of them own land? Or how many people in, say, Imo State own land? But in China, everyone owned the land because they were communists. So if you don't use your land, you lease it to someone like maybe Dangote Rice that wants to make rice, and Dangote Rice pays you. That's the second thing they did. Then it was only after they had done the agriculture in the rural areas, reformed their land policies, reformed how they distribute income, they removed taxes on agriculture and said if you make money from agriculture, you can keep it. Remember, they were communists, but they let people keep their wealth. Only when they had done this, they then go to the rural, to the coastal areas and say, we're going to set up export processing zones where the foreigners will come in, but our trained Chinese will go and work with the foreigners, learn what the foreigners are doing, copy it back to rural areas, and we then create our own Chinese versions of what they are doing. And that's what has worked for them today. So after agriculture that was local, they then went into export growth. And that's why they're the behemoth today. 3 trillion in savings in forex savings. That's China. 800 million people taken out of poverty. So this is the what I want to see, the planning. We can do the exact same thing. But there's this focus in Nigeria of want to build the towns first, then we get this urban rural drift that we cannot manage. So everyone runs to Lagos. There are no jobs in Lagos anymore, right? But everyone is running to Lagos. And the villages that have all the wealth of land, of cheap labor, it's empty. But everybody's in Lagos looking for a job in the bank. Sammy, you've got the floor, sir. Hey, Sammy, going once. Sammy, I hope you can hear me. You're going to live long. Sammy, you've got the floor. Let's take.
Hi, Carlo. Thanks for the opportunity and thanks for the space. I've heard what.
Sammy, you sort of you dropped off. Can you still hear me? You're muted. If you can still hear me. All right, it looks like Sammy has some issues. Let's say Victor. Victor, you've got the floor, sir. Victor, I've got Victor.
Hi, Carlo.
Victor, hello.
Yeah, I'm good. Good evening. I
an
really
opportunity
appreciate.
to either enrich themselves,
Oh
to be nepotistic, and as well as favor people of their own ethnic nationalities or their own religious sentiment.
Victor, let's take you. I'm going to drop Sammy off. I think he's having problems with his audio. Victor, go ahead, sir.
All right. Thank you very much, Carlo. I really love what you're doing. I love the space. A couple of points I wanted to bring on board. First of all, I want to buttress on education. Now, when I say education, I'm not even talking about university education or like the mainstream ones we know, because we can even see graduates that they are not informed of like what is going on in their neighborhood, like the new policies that are coming up, like the new policy on electricity that states can generate, people can generate electricity. So many people are not aware. Like what one of the speakers said, if it's a gossip that something, you see thousands and even thousands of followers, they'll retweet and they are really quick to retweet gossip. But you see something like startup bill that was approved last time. One of the WhatsApp group that I have a lot of young people, I was like, hey guys, look, this startup bill means you can go to university for like on government loan, federal government loan. Like there are some policies that have been approved and they were like, it's because of election period. It boils down to that lack of what is going on. What are the reforms going on around us? And also there's this pessimistic mindset that anything that government does is against the people, is for their pocket. I'm like, look, government is me and you. I'm apolitical. Like I'm not of APC, PDP. I'm a bit tilted to Labour Party, to be very sincere with you, but I still look at things like in a very constructive way. There are some policies that came up during election period that a lot of young people, they are not aware of, around education, around startup. It was even someone that told me if you buy .ng domain, you can get grants from federal government. These are things that people, they are not even interested to know. Like they want to know is that, federal government did this, and they retreat massively. But all those policies that are coming on board, and you see few people are just taking advantage as if nobody's there to take up this. And another thing I wanted to say is that it still boils down to education. And the second point I'm going to make is still on education. There was a time I wanted to do something around production, and it boils down to we having to use polypropylene to produce plastics. And it turns out to be that the only plant that is producing polypropylene in Nigeria has been sold to an Indian company. I was like, why? And it was very complex. I had to go to Port Harcourt and a lot of complexities around this. And I now later realized that we don't have that knowledge. It's only very few people that want to produce. A lot of people like, we import. They don't have like, we don't have that mindset. Okay, let me go to school and study chemistry because I want to do this. Like, if even a young person doesn't, most of them don't have that long term. Okay, in the next 15 years, I want to be producing this. I want to be doing this. And let me study this, or let me even pick up a course and do this. They might pick up a course because they want to pick up a job. But very rare you see someone that, okay, in the next 10 years of my life, I want to start producing this for Africa. Let me pick up this course. Let me learn this. Let me learn that. It's the other way around. Let me learn this because there are more jobs for this stuff. And we fail to forget that we can actually create these jobs. We can start producing. So when I went to Port Harcourt, they told me, look, there are Indians that are controlling that plant. And I think it's Dangote factory that we are looking up to now, that as Nigerians, to start producing polypropylene. But what I'm saying in essence is that young people tend to run over frivolities, and they don't like actually know what's going on. They are not like kind of informed. Even people that call themselves graduates, graduates, even school undergraduates, they
I
are
hear
all excited about.
you, Victor.
So that just, thank you.
Yeah, yeah. And just a few points for you. From one on the Chinese side, right? When they focus on education, they focused on skill acquisition. At a point, they would bring the expert, and the expert would work, and people would watch him. So they focused more on, can you do this? If they didn't even really focus on giving a degree. So they would go to the farm and say, we're going to teach you guys how to make an engine or how to service an engine. And the farmers learned the skills, but they didn't go to school per se. They did that at the very, very initial stage to get skill transfer across a wide spectrum of China. So they built schools for the kids, but they focused intently on skill transfer. Not really that you are a doctor, but that you are a doctor that knows how to do something. That's one thing Nigeria can also pick up. To your point about the factory that does the polypropylene, that factory was an NNPC petrochemical refinery, and it stopped working. It was dead. It was dead the same way Nigerian refineries were dead. The Indians came in here, invested money in that factory. Now it's making billions for Nigeria. So, if anything, we should thank the Indians. The same way the refineries are lying all over the place in Nigeria. If we had sold them a long time ago, it would have been working. Now Nigeria has no refineries. Even the Dangote refinery is not around. Hence, we can't remove subsidy, right? So this is the situation we find ourselves. So much wealth in the nation, but it's all wasting away because we have incompetence. I can look at Ajaokuta. That one has gone. It's not going to work. I told them 7 years ago. They were arguing and abusing me on Twitter. Now it's not going to work. The smelter company, the Iwapin paper mill company. These are situationally, these are companies that could have changed Nigeria's situation, but they never worked, right? So Nigeria really, we've got to go back to the very, very basics. I would even say we should stop building new stuff and go and fix the old ones. We have Metro Line in Lagos. Metro Line. Now we're doing Blue Line, Red Line. Where's the Metro Line? Go back and get those things that were supposed to work initially. Go back and fix them. We don't have the money to build any railway now of consequence in Nigeria. There's no money. Nigeria has no money. We can print naira, yes, but we can't print dollar. So we have to be very, very careful going forward what we do. We've just added 22 trillion in debt to Nigeria's debt. On paper, we just took 22 trillion and we said we spent this money in the last 7 years. We didn't budget for it, so we just added it just by a stroke of a pen. 22 trillion. If Nigeria took 22 trillion and even gave to ASU, just give it to ASU alone, or built universities, the GDP of this country would double. Because any investment you make in education, you double you increase your GDP per capita. So where did the 22 trillion go to? But these are the issues we don't want to go into here. We're really talking about solutions. And I'm doing this specifically because I am a Nigerian first, Adi. So whoever is going to be in charge of Nigeria, these are the things we want them to hear. We don't want a grandiose project anymore. We don't want someone to come and say he wants to build, and I'm going to quote, we don't want a quote unquote Lekki, Echo, what's that? Echo, that island. Look, those other island in Lagos, that island, Echo, whatever. We really don't want that anymore. What we want is someone that will go after the poor people in the villages in Nigeria, get their incomes up. Nigeria's problem is low consumption. People are poor in Nigeria. You cannot be earning 18,000 naira since what year? Fuel alone has gone up in price. There's nothing in Nigeria that's price must increase. So how are Nigerians surviving? So the focus has got to be on poverty, not poverty eradication, wealth creation. Anyone not doing that is wasting his time. We don't want the grandiose. We don't want 5 new international airports. We don't want, I don't know, we just need to go and make wealth for Nigerians. Once there is wealth and security, the economy will take care of itself. China guaranteed security. That's why they were able to do all these programs. Ibrahim, you got the floor, sir. Ibrahim underscore BK. Go ahead, sir.
Okay, thank you very much, sir. Good evening, all.
Ibrahim, you're
I,
low. You're kind of low. The volume, audio.
okay, can you hear me?
I can hear you, but it's kind of low, bro.
Okay.
Let me get Danjuma to speak. Yeah,
Yes.
Ibrahim, yeah, go ahead. I can hear you now.
Okay.
Ibrahim, go ahead.
Okay. Thank you very much, sir. I'm super excited actually to join this space. For the past, I think 30 minutes, and I learned a lot from other speakers, especially talking about how we can participate in trying to build or in trying to make a good things in Nigeria, and especially talking about this China. Um, Actually, for the China's success in eradicating extreme poverty actually is a result of a combination of factors. I think the Chinese government's poverty alleviation campaign was a top-down effort that involved certain targets, providing pounding and mobilizing resources at all levels of government. The difference between how China's approach trying to um, provide some sort of like developing infrastructure such as roads and bridges in rural areas. What I can add here is to ensure that we want Nigeria at least not to maybe to copy 100% of what China did actually, but at least to try something tangible. Um, like you have mentioned, Mr. Kalu, regarding the education. Actually, the debt that Nigeria's borrowed almost 22 trillion. At least if that pound has been given maybe to us or something like that, at least the education will have double this GDP. And thank you very much for this space. Thank you very much all, and
Thank you.
yeah, thank you very much, sir.
All right, you're welcome. Hey, Danjuma, what's up? You got the floor, sir. And I do apologize if I take you off.
Okay. Hello,
Just to
can you
add,
hear me?
I can hear you. Go ahead, sir. Danjuma, go ahead.
Okay, yeah, thank you, Aja. Yeah, so I just joined, but I had something. The topic is, can we eradicate extreme poverty? So my answer is yes, but of course, there's a whole lot that we have to do. And it's not, so I've looked at a lot of things that we have in Nigeria.
Danjuma, your
Sir,
audio is not.
oh, can you hear me?
I can hear you, but the audio is not too clear. Yeah.
Okay, how about, okay.
A lot better now.
How about now? How about now?
Yeah. Now, a lot better. Go ahead.
Okay, yeah. So looking at things, I've been studying Nigerian for I think for the last 20 years, and the summary is that we really don't have a government. So when you compare it to that of China, we really don't. And the reason for that is those who come into government, they just come into government for themselves. They try to make money just for themselves. Of course, it makes a business sense to have sold a refinery long ago. I remember Jonathan did try to sell it, where these guys came in and they said that was rubbish. Ajakuta is something that ought to have been done away with, make it workable. But our government, they don't listen to business acumen. So there's something that we did, myself and a few others, and that's why we realized that this can be done. I'm from Kogi State, and then the part of Kogi I'm from is the parts where we share border with the Igbos, especially from Enugu. I think Kogi, then Benue, and Enugu, that part of Enugu. So very close to Ubolo. We live there like a community. You can intermarry, do everything. It's the same as Nigeria. So I'm in the IT industry, and I realize what IT has done. So I often go to the village and I tell people you need to focus on value creation and all of that. And then we give them a few trainings on IT and there and there. Some of them we sponsor them. But also, again, we look at, I have one of my cousin who has done a lot and say, look, no matter how poor the area is, if we focus on value creation, people can actually make money for themselves and take care of themselves. And so constant education, where we look at them, advise them what you can do in your community, how you can create value. Then now we have a market there. To the both of us from Kogi State, the Ubolo, the Igbos are like our international guys. I don't know how those guys do it. They have a way of getting anything done. It's just that they don't have government support. I don't know. Government is totally against those guys, but those guys are doing a whole lot by themselves. So things like cassava, they've done a lot of. But now, what is raining in my place now is cashew. I think someone spoke about standardization. Yes, there are different areas, different guys who comes up with their own requirement, and they are doing that. There are already those who are now looking at how they can make cashew well better for themselves. These are family, so we'll be able to create communities, create like a union or a sort of a group where they help one another. And what we've seen is that over time, people are very, very deliberate to make life better for themselves. We've seen that cashew alone, we've seen their interaction with the Igbos who have the international market, always come to the farms, come to those Kogi, come to those villages, sit down with those guys who are picking this cashew, who wants cashew, and how they can buy these cashews from them. And they are doing a whole lot of that. Now, but yes, you might want to say production, how can we produce, how can we do this? The truth is that our people only are not being supported in any form. But with the few support we have offered, some of them is even giving them loans, give them as little as 30K, 50K. Someone can start something all by themselves. They are very agile. They are very strong. And this, I'm talking about remote communities. You see people now being able to send their children to private school. I mean, in village standard, because the education in those areas is completely non-existent anymore. I grew up in the village. I think in the 80s, I had my education in the village in the 80s, and before coming to Lagos in 1989, where I was able to see the sharp difference of what is in the city compared to what is in the village. And what we've seen is that I've seen guys who have no hope at all now being able to get something done by their own self. Putting in does that effort. We've seen those making progress in IT, and we've seen those starting up a small business, something as simple as dry cleaning, something as simple as offering transport services, something as simple as offering helping them to charge maybe their phone, something as simple as providing power but not in large scale in form of solar, and then because of sun that is massively available, something as simple as having water to provide water for the people, and people are making living out of it. But when you compare all of this to the Chinese, you made mention of the government and the collective effort. That is completely lacking. But what I've seen is that individual here in Nigeria, particularly from where I've come from, people like the Igbos that I've worked with, people are very ready to get their hands to work and make things better for themselves. Thank you.
Thanks, Ibrahim. Danjo, that's a good summary for us. I mean, again, we don't. I like the reality is things are bad. We know it, and we can spend the whole space talking about why things are bad. I want us to think more of solutions, what we can copy, what is working. So I'm not saying don't talk about your reality. There's a reality that things are bad. We are all here. We know how things are. But again, remember, as bad as things are in Nigeria, we've not yet had a, should we say, famine. People are hungry, people are suffering. But in China, millions died because of famine. And they went from that to what they are today. You know, I tell you guys a story all the time of how a Chinese guy, his name is Mr. Chris Woods. If you Google him, I think he's the chairman of the Nigerian Chinese Chamber of Commerce, Mr. Chris Wood. He was talking about when he came to Nigeria, I think that was 1978. The Chinese government sent Chinese engineers to Lagos to study overhead bridges. Because back then, only Lagos was one of the few cities on earth that had overhead bridges in Lagos. One of the few. And they came here to study bridges in Lagos, the Chinese. And today, they're the ones funding our bridges now in Nigeria. So what did they do? I mean, we know what they did. And like I said, they have a few advantages, but still, what can we get from them is where I'm going to. Iche, Iche Omenka, you've got the floor, sir. Go ahead.
Yeah. Okay. Good evening. Good evening, everybody. I've been listening. I'm actually a frequent listener to your spaces, though I'm always on the listener section. But this topic actually caught my attention. So I'm actually going to prefer most of like solution based on what that I've actually said and my own personal experience. I'm that kind of hands-on kind of guy. Yeah, not that I can't go and sit down. In fact, if probably I could sit down and write, I'll definitely get A's, which has always been there like that. But I'm that kind of person that mere looking at something working, I can literally go down, go back, sit down, create a different design, replicate something better. So even as of my second year in school, I've already started working with a couple of oil multinationals right back from then. Then I opted to go uh, um for this more of like a professional where I can get hands-on because I know where my weaknesses and strengths were. So some of my guys decided to go to Unizik. I went to Metallurgical Training Institute. From there, as of year 2, I started working with multinationals there. So now my point is, the truth is that the way we see some sort of education, and sometimes I'm sad with the kind of government we actually have in this part of the world. I've actually studied Chinese closely, Chinese, and you can equally think about what is this country again? I will still remember their name. So what they do is that they think the kind of education they do is not necessarily all about the classroom, the 4 classrooms. For example, in my own state, there was this program we had. So I've actually figured out that you can literally find a lot of youths that are actually interested in trying to create one thing or the other, just like exploring that their fantasy things they actually knew. They really wanted to get something done. So I had an opportunity. I met with some government officials, some commissioner, I met with the governor. I told him, sir, you see, in every community, you guys knew me. Maybe I can actually do a whole lot of great things. There are a lot of millions of people, youths, young ones like me that actually want to do something. So this is what we're going to do. Let it be at least in every community. We can just create maybe a building just like a classroom and listed out equipment. Buy lathe machine, buy grinding machine, buy this, just normal all those hands-on equipment. Go to different ministries in government. From the Ministry of Science and Tech, pick one person, go to private, maybe some private firm, because I don't really like government to handle such kind of thing just all alone because of how government operates. Let there be some people oversight. Let these young ones, once you get back from school, you don't have anything, we can just go there. Whatever you want to experiment, start doing it there. Government, you can literally fund this thing. It's not only maybe something sort of big. We have a lot of young ones doing all that. We can actually integrate maybe an ICT unit for those that want to coach. At least say something that is not even up to 200 million. I thought that this is exactly what we need. Just give us a challenge. Give us maybe a project.
I want you to land the ship. Make your point.
Okay. So my point is that I really think that the government really need to focus on what will actually impact on people. Because it looks like in this part of the world, all we actually see as development is actually building a whole lot of bridges, maybe painting them, just concentrating on one part of the city. I feel that the development will actually need to start from the rural areas, just like someone else has actually said. And probably maybe we really need to look at how we see our educational systems. Maybe vocation need to be attached to the education so that even when we read, we should be able to go there and practicalize. By the time somebody comes out of school, you're already a professional and are actually being employable in all these fields. Thank you.
Gotcha. Vocational, rural based. I mean, those are things we're talking about here, and I'm glad that's. I think something like you said, you're right. Vocational, rural. Those are two key words I heard there. I am Eri Olua. Go ahead, sir. I'm glad to have you here.
Good evening, Mr. Kalu. Always a pleasure to be here, and good evening, everyone.
Hello, sir.
You know what? I want to quickly say this. We need to focus on the access to loan, cheap access to loan, because what we have currently in Nigeria is practically impossible for entrepreneurs to get access to loan that are cheap. The ones that they have, it becomes practically impossible for them to make ends meet with it. And that's a big challenge. So we need to fix that. Another thing we need to fix is to focus on that skill acquisition, which is probably being overflowed, but we need to emphasize it. You know, I remember when I was in school and the idea or the mindset was get to school, graduate, and then start making money. So if we focus on skill acquisition, then people will start understanding that what really matters is you becoming somebody that can offer value and get reward with money in return. So it wouldn't be all these trying to stay at home, for years, trying to get job, and after that, then what happens? So we need to focus on that. Another thing we need to focus on is to prioritize financial literacy. You're doing fantastic work. Your book and everything that are in the market. A lot of people that have bought your book, let's talk about your money. They give a good review. Some parent bought it for their kids and all that. If we can get more people reading that, more people understanding that, if we focus on developing as many people as possible, then we'll be able to create a better society where people on their own will start making decisions that will, in the end, favor the community they are in. Then another thing we need to focus on is multiplying the Igbo apprenticeship system. That system is now being studied in Harvard. And you don't have it in any Nigerian institution. Why can't we just do it? And we have millions of Igbos that can actually teach us these things easily. So we need to think of getting our own thing done by ourselves. The last thing I want to talk about is the government foreign policy. India, their inflation rate is 0, if I'm correct. How did they get there? When the Ukraine-Russia war started, they maneuvered their way. They are not enemy to China. They're not enemy to America or UK. They know how to play their game. They are friends with South Africa. They are friends with everybody. They are just playing their game. They are after, when people were saying, don't go to China and do business, they were one of the first group that actually struck deal with Russia. What am I trying to say here? I'm trying to say, let's try and redefine our foreign policy to favor us. Let's not just keep following the multitude and what are they doing? What do we want to gain from what is happening? If India can do it, we can also do it. And the last thing that I saw India did was they stopped a lot of China's product into their countries and a whole lot of things that China was doing that they felt, no, this is destroying our economy. And they waged the war. And if you really follow the story, you will see the impact is what is happening now. It didn't start now, but now they are reaping the reward of what they put in place. So if we can do this, we will get there. It will be slow, but steady and precise. We will get there. Thank you.
Well, yeah, some good points there. Just mute you, I think. Some good points there about what we can do to sort of use our own local advantage, right? I like the point about the Igbo apprenticeship scheme. Just to explain what it is, it's essentially skill-based learning, right? Where you take folks, you take an apprentice, and you teach him on the job by observing, by twinning. He watches what you're doing. But most importantly, when he graduates, you give him startup capital. I think that's the difference with what the Igbos do and what other apprentices do, is that when he's working for you, you are paying him, but you are amortizing that payment, right? And then at the very end of his tenure, when you release him, when you say he has graduated from the internship, you give him startup capital, you give him connections to your links. So it's like a venture capital guy saying, I'm going to give you seed funds. But if you grow your capital, where if you reach this level of capitalization, I will give you more capital and I will give you more access to markets so that you can grow. And because they do it across the board, there's a pathway. A kid in the village has a pathway from the village to becoming an economically significant individual by simply getting apprenticeship trained. He knows if I spend 10 years with this guy, my Oga will give me he'll give me my freedom, and I have capital, I have access to his network. I mean, I see their ceremonies. It's a very, very big thing. It's not just a casual thing. When people are getting released, their families come, they will do your CV there, and then they'll say you came, this is what you did, and there's no set funds. It's based on how you have worked. So if you work lackadaisically, the guy can give you 2 million. There are some people that have worked very, very hard for their boss and they give them a lot of capital. So it's something we can adopt, institutionalize, put some some guardrails around it, and then maybe some folks can adopt it. I like it. So let's see what we can do with it. Baba Machina, you've got the floor, sir.
Hello, I don't know if I'm audible.
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you so much for the opportunity. I love listening to most of your Twitter space conversation. And this one caught my attention because we are talking about extreme poverty and how to replicate the Chinese models of development to Africa, precisely Nigeria. But I just want to make a comment because I don't think if in Nigeria or Africa with this kind of arrangement of we are more oriented, socialist oriented people, and most of our policies and program is being influenced by socialist ideas. So it is hardly for us to improve the quality or to improve the standard of living of our people in African continent, which with this kind of socialist systems. For example, in Nigeria, I saw a report that about $7 billion was spent for social investment program in Nigeria. But if you look at the statistics from World Bank's National Bureau of Statistics and other other developmental indices, institutions, you might understand that it has not yielded any impact. The poverty is going off, and China is lifting about nearly billion Nigerians, Chinese out of poverty in 4 decades. China take advantage of globalization. China take advantage of America using their, America using cheap labor in China. Uh, China use that opportunity to lift these people, about nearly billions Chinese, out of poverty. So we need to understand globalization. We need to understand where the global economy is going. And we also need to discard the idea of socialist, because it is only advanced country, that can employ this kind of spending money just like that. And we cannot create job with this kind of arrangement, sharing money in the name of cash, conditional cash transfer, social investment, and all of that. We need to provide enabling environments for private sectors to thrive. We need to attract foreign investment, just like the way China is doing. Because even China is overtook America in terms of foreign investments, in China, in the world, in terms of foreign investment, so we can also do that in Africa. What we need is for our leader to provide us with enabling environments for private sectors to thrive, provide security, provide education, quality education, let's just improve our own quality of education, because it is only with the quality of education that we can move people out of poverty. And our education is obsolete. And what we are doing now in Africa, we are just producing next generation of letter writers. And that is what virtually most of our universities are doing. Our lecturers are not productive. The university itself is not productive. There are no any transfer of knowledge between the university and the industry in Africa. So we are now borrowing from other Western countries. We need to understand our problem. We need to understand what is our developmental needs. How do we eradicate people? How do you eradicate poverty and lift people out of poverty? And we need to understand that we cannot do that without giving people handouts, giving people money. We are making people lazy. Instead of that, creates credit facilities, that rural people will access it,
I
so
hear you.
that way will create wealth. Thank you so much. Sorry.
Yeah, Baba, good points there. Very, very good points on the. You are talking about we are being too socialist and all that. I agree with you. Let me just make a few points about conditional cash transfers. They're not bad. It's just that what Nigeria is doing it wrong. If you go to Brazil, Brazil used what they call Bolsa Familia. That was a conditional cash transfer. They did it, and they did it perfectly. It works there in Brazil. They will give you cash, but in return, your kid must get inoculated. Your kid has to go to school, and your kid, what's the last one? Yeah, they attach conditions to it. So you can get the cash, in return, the kid, your family has to send your kid to school, and the kid has got to get inoculated against all these childhood diseases. So it's a very, very good way for extreme poverty. The folks that are so poor that they can do nothing. Yes, the state can create that cash sitting there. But in Nigeria's case, I'm not sure we have any record. We keep on saying we're giving money to 10,000 households. If you call for that record, I doubt you get that record. We've wasted that money.
Of course, we don't have that record, and the money is the cash, the conditional cash transfer is just something that is just a scam. Because even those people that you ask, if you ask people who are beneficiary, or actually they will just tell you that we're not getting anything from the government. We are just spending the money just like that, and the money is just spending, and corruption is taking over. And that is why I say socialist ideology in Africa is not for us, because our system, our institution is weak.
Mm,
So the money is going to the hands of few individuals instead of the target beneficiary. And we cannot reduce poverty. We cannot leave people out of poverty in a situation like this.
mm. I got you. Good points. I got you. Let's see what happens. I mean, we have to be flexible. That's my way. And I think the problem is not the policy itself, but the personnel running the policy. I think that's where Nigeria gets it wrong. The personnel running that policy, to me, need to be called to order. Ewama Vese, how do I get that right? You got the floor, sir. Go ahead.
Yeah, good evening, Mr. Carlo. Can you hear me, please?
I can hear you very well.
Okay, yes. Okay, thanks very much for this session. Very enlightening. I like how you've been talking about, you've been very focused on what China did with respect to education, reforms with respect to land and all that. And yes, maybe before the end of this discussion, I will pin a link under this your tweet. It's from New Economic Thinking, how the Chinese economy really works. And
Okay.
there were two things. Yeah, there were two things that stood out for me. There's one thing that sorry, there are two things that people also take for granted, and I think you just referred to that in the last before I just came on, and that was you were talking about the quality of personnel. Lots of people underestimate what a competent bureaucracy did for China's evolution.
That is
It is
true.
something. It is something that they don't play with. In fact, Xi Jinping right now wrote a book, Up and Out of Poverty, because he was taxed in his earlier years when he was managing a province. And I think a lot of us have watched the TED talk about, the guy describing how people in the CCP graduate and how they are actually very thoroughbred technocrats
Mm.
and why they are different from a whole lot of other people. So I think that is something that we need to take. It's very, very important for, lifting people out of poverty because when you have competent bureaucrats, they are focused on the long-term goal and they bring lots of technocracy and less of all these challenges of prebendalism, nepotism that models up whatever policies that we want to do, want to execute. Then, yeah, that's the first one. Then, secondly, I wanted to also double down. Yeah, sorry. The second one is restructuring. Um, when Deng Xiaoping entered, there was a form of autonomy given to to counties, and it really really helped. So there was a central kind of administration that occurred, but there was this semi-local autonomy for local people. So counties, you even find out that counties and cities were even able to raise bonds to do better infrastructure and attract people, attract companies to come and set up. You even had the CCP organizing competitions, sort of among counties in a place, then from counties among cities, from cities to provinces. So this competition, this decentralization, and this autonomy that they gave to local people, sorry, counties, cities, and provinces, all, and the competition also catalyzed development, and it's something that a lot of people really, really overlook. But it's something that was also very important. Those were the two things I wanted to talk about. But lastly, sorry, I didn't want to forget this. If anybody has been following the news, I think this is doubling down on what you said, Mr. Carlo, about education. You could see that I think the last year or the year before, China actually banned private education. This is because a lot of people were taking advantage of the high, what do you call it, regard for exams and education in China. Parents spend a whole lot of money on education with respect to extra lessons and all that. So education is a very, 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 very serious thing that the Chinese government doesn't take for granted. I just wanted to double down on that. Thank you.
Yeah, good point. Again, they just talk about the civil service, right? In China, their civil service are elites. Same as in Singapore, their civil servants are elite. When you become a civil servant in any of those countries, you are the best in that. You are the best, and you are being given resources to manage, and they expect a lot from you. Look at Nigeria in the night from 1960 to 1963. Nigeria was the fastest growing region in the whole of the world, right? And our civil service all the way to 1967 were also elites. If you worked in Nigeria back then, everyone wanted to work for the government in Nigeria. It was only the best that could work in the government. I know a particular story firsthand, where a guy was employed by Mobil. Back then, when oil companies would come to Nigeria, they were educating people for free. And people would go to the oil companies, go to universities for free, then run away and go and work for the government. So there was this actual article, Mobil back then, did an advert and they listed names of students that they had sponsored to go to university that had now run away to work for the government of Nigeria. This was in 1967 or so. This was how good Nigerian civil service was. But once we made it now in government in Nigeria is where you put unemployed people. If you have a cousin, he can't get a job, or you have a girlfriend, she can't get a job in a bank, well, you send to ministry of whatever to get a job. So the Nigerian ministries are now full of uneducated people that are there because they can't get a job in the real world. So they're just bloated folks. So once you can be able to make that civil service go back to being the elite, very eggheadish, very, they deliver, then you're on the right path because the civil service are the ones that implement the budget. Whatever the president writes in his budget, policy is personnel. It is those civil servants that would implement it. I give you another good example again. The Minister of Agriculture back then, is now the president of the African Development Bank, additional. He said when he went to, let me take his name off. When they went to a minister who was going on a tour around Nigeria, he went to a particular zone, and that zone had tractors parked in their parking lot, just parked there. He asked them, why are you keeping tractors here? The guy said, oh, they have to fill this policy, they have to fill this paperwork to get a tractor. So farmers in the field don't have tractors, but this ministry guy has got tractors in the park, just parked there. Why are they there? That's power, because you have to come and beg him for tractor. That's how he has his power. He signed there and then, release all the tractors out to people. It still was not done. Someone wrote him a personal letter and said, these tractors you wrote to release are still not released. He had to go back there and ensure that all the tractors were released to farmers. But this is what I'm telling you. On the budget, we have bought tractors, but the tractors are packed in ministry of quote unquote because one guy wants to create his own power. So policy is personnel and personnel is policy. If you've got bad civil servants, you really can't get anything done. Haruna, how are you doing, Mr. Haruna? I wanted you to hop in, because Haruna, I don't know if you joined the call from the beginning. Haruna, we were talking about how China has really focused. What China did, Haruna, this will interest you, was that they developed agriculture starting from the rural areas. They first of all made the rural areas rich. They made the farmers rich by allowing the farmers to lease out their land, to own their land. They supported them with financing. They removed taxes from the farmers. It's only when the farmers and agriculture became a huge contributor to wealth reduction, wealth creation in China, they then focused on the manufacturing side at the coast. Do you have any take on that?
Yes, Mr. Kalu, the Chinese economic blueprint is a marvel to the world. In fact, it has brought the eradication of poverty to a very good level. And what did they do spectacular? The backward integration system, and then the spirit of patriotism. The spirit of patriotism. The spirit of patriotism. They went back first from Mao or down, let's say before Mao. You see China first before anything. They midwife the social aspect of socialism and mix it with the capitalist, small capitalist, but they made sure they laid the foundation first. The basics were there. Because if you are patriotic to your country, there's nothing. That is the key first. Like you are making an example of the Ministry of Agriculture now. The guy that held the tractors, he was not patriotic. He doesn't care. He wants to show his orga. But if he's patriotic, he wants his country to move forward, to develop. He will have released the tractors. Even when documents are not complete, he will make sure he follow it up for the farmers to complete the documentation, but the tractors are in field working to increase output. So the backward integration of the Chinese has helped them from the agriculture to the manufacturing sector, and then the involvement of government in the key role after providing the policies. The government make sure the policies adhere to, and they create enabling environment Like you go to a village now, you find that a new expanse of land will just be open, industrial hub set up. The government will make the buildings like in a warehouse form, and then people will come in. And then there's no monopoly on manufacturing. Like assuming you manufacture a TV, you don't have to create anything out of have a monopoly for the production of TV. Somebody will be producing the cover, somebody will produce the glass, somebody will IC the diodes and so on and so forth, the transistors. You find that a lot of companies then they will come together and build that TV. So there's an expansive inclusiveness in production. There's expansive inclusiveness in the backing of the small and medium enterprises. This, by doing that, they are eradicating poverty because they've opened the value chain of industrialization to the least level. You have electricity, you have good roads, you have housing in that sector. So you coming as an entrepreneur, being given the funding, you have nothing to like inject into it. Nothing, virtually nothing. Everything has been laid down. You just start production. Like I've been to Guangzhou, I've been to some deep industrial layouts in Guangxi and so on. Come and see where I went. You see, like now China have stopped even blasting their rocks there. They import boulders and then come to their factories and they cut it and give us granite because they are, you know, the rocks are like pegs to the earth, so they don't want them to diminish. They've So what do? They increase, they negotiate, they finance their SMEs. They finance, but the key thing there, the key thing, Kalu, is that patriotism. Because no matter what government does, if citizens are not patriotic and they don't see their country first, it will never work out. That is why you see we have a lot of hiccups. We know government policies are there, we lack our own from our own side, the patriotism is there. That is why the government policies are not even implemented. Let me yield.
Yeah, but Harna, I mean, we're all patriotic now. I mean, what I'm getting to is this, right? You know, where does patriotism stop and where does competence start? You know, where does it really, every patriotism, where does it really start and stop? You know, you are a farmer.
You see the problem
Come to the
about
true.
patriotism. You see, is a very large topic now that we are going to talk about. You see, when you say where does patriotism doesn't have an end point, and it doesn't have to start from somewhere. It starts from when you are young, from your parents, from our community, from our wards,
The
from our
point
units. In this sector, when you are
that's
talking about the poverty aspect of it, the patriotism is I will get profit, like from my own farming. This thing.
Harna, you drop. If you can. Yeah, you drop. Go ahead.
Okay, can I go?
Yes,
You see that? Yeah, that's what you had when I said the.
Harna, I'm not touching. You are the one dropping off.
Okay, let me
can
drop and come back again.
No, not a problem. Go ahead, sir. Issa Chiroma, you've got the floor.
Hello everyone.
Hey, how you doing, sir?
Good evening, sir. Good evening, everyone. I actually joined this after the meeting have started, and I'm actually very glad, and I'm really happy seeing this space for so many reasons. Because this is telling us that at least there are a group of Nigerians that are ready for the change and that have been spotting where our problem is starting from and where the problem is reaching and where it is heading to. So at least it will be very good thing for us to be able to have a solution for the problem. I'm really glad I have heard so much and I've learned a lot, ranging from how Chinese solved their problem or almost solved their problem, and they are trying to expand as well. So if we look at it, China was a very poor country back then, and now they are one of the countries with strongest economy, and their people are doing well for so many reasons. I think most of the speakers have talked about this, like the way the reason for China's success and how they succeed. China have a mentality. Almost all the Chinese have one mentality of bringing back home value. Wherever you see Chinese, all they try to do is to take value back home. Now look at our own Africans, or let me say Nigerians in particular. People love to leave the country not because they want to go there, see how they have their own change, and the reason why they are growing, or the reason why they have life different from our own, in order to come back home and effect the same thing. People actually go out of Nigeria or leave the country just trying to make their life better and not even having the hope to come back, talk less of changing anything. So this is telling us that Nigerians, or let me say Africans, in particular Nigerians, we have one mentality, and all that we think about most of the times is ourselves. Mr. Haruna and other speakers have talked about patriotism. This is actually very important, and it is one of the points where we are failing. I will agree with them that Nigerians are actually not patriotic. Now, look at this.
Come on. So it's what I'm trying to say with this patriotism thing, that it doesn't matter. I mean, does it matter if we're patriotic or not? What I'm trying to say is that business is business. Debits and credits don't have nothing to do
Yes,
with patriotism.
I understand. Sir, please, I am heading somewhere.
Yeah, but okay, I want you to land the ship because I want to get others to speak. Yeah.
Okay. So now, if we look at this thing, actually, even people that are running business or trying to create wealth in Nigeria, their own goals and aims are not to develop Nigeria. If you look at it, reason being, we have so many, but we have bunch of individual billionaires that are only after themselves, that are not having the goal to create wealth in order to eradicate poverty. So if we can change the goal now, if we can change the goal, they will still remain their billionaire status, but they are going to have a lot of social impact. How? Because now look at where the problem starts from.
All right, Isaac, I gotta let others speak. I hear you. I get your points. Fantastic. But I want to let others speak. Yeah. So can I go? I'm gonna move on, right?
Okay. Let me just make my last point. So, with all that I said, we can't change what already happened, but the change can start from us. How? Because if us here start changing the way we think, meaning first maybe you change yourself, you think in a different direction, you can have a good goal of creating wealth. But why? In order to eradicate poverty. If you do that and you become very positive in it, you are going to be innovative and you are going to create wealth for yourself. In the process, you are going to help many other people go out of poverty. So now it's not about people. Most of people now, what they think about is getting job. Now, if Nigeria will open room for people to have job, then the country is going to become poorer than it is now. Why? Because having job is not creating any value for the country. But if
Wait,
we can,
hold up. It's having job isn't creating value for the country. Explain that.
okay, let me explain this point. Now, if you look at institutions like CBN and NNPC, for example, if almost all graduates that are in Nigeria want to work there. So imagine now if Nigeria would go to these kind of institutions and create a lot of jobs, it's going to create an environment where people will be there not having the work to do because they are there for privilege of collecting salary. And what jobs used to do to the employees actually, most especially government job. Whether you work, you didn't do the work, you escape days, anything that you do, at the end of the day, at the end of the month, you see your paycheck. So
Okay. No,
people don't.
I get you now.
People. So what I mean now is,
I gotta let others speak. I'm so sorry. Yeah. So let me get Queen in here, right? Queen, you've got the floor. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Kalu, for letting me speak. So actually, I have a hypothesis.
Okay.
The that we are not willing to end poverty in Nigeria, and that's because I believe that people, and that's part of
Wow.
the hypothesis, that people who have existed where there is extreme poverty for a long time have become accustomed to this disproportionate power that poverty gives them, and because of it, they don't want to give up this power. For instance, you would compare how politics is played. I'm from one of the poorest states in Nigeria, and you'd compare how politics, Ebonyi State, actually is played in my state compared to other richer states. I think there is more resistance in states that have more that have more wealth. So I think that then let's now come to Nigeria collectively. We're not looking at it at the state level. So I think that I don't think there was a tweet by Gimba Ka. I'm going to put the tweet here. And there was something he said. He said that it's not he was trying to say that it's not the absence of competence among, because Mr. Kali, you talked about competence in the civil service, but Mr. Gimba said it's not the absence of competence in the civil service or in Nigeria that is causing our problems. Because I think one of the things we do is that we equate intelligence with empathy, and we try to which is a little elitist, because we try to infer that crimes are committed by people that are less intelligent. But the truth is that intelligence, competence can exist in the absence of empathy. I'm sure that in many of the ministries in Nigeria, many people there are very competent. They know exactly what to do. They have the intelligence to be able to solve problems. But the thing is that people profit from poverty in many ways. Number one, the disproportionate power. We have a culture of hero worshipping, where the moment you get wealth, you're the chairman of the occasion, you're getting chieftaincy titles, you're getting follows on social media, you're getting this obsequiousness that follows you. I know someone who was obscure. Not I don't he was obscure until his wealth became popular knowledge, and suddenly everywhere, even if he writes cough on social media, he has lots of comments on it. So basically we have this culture of worshiping money, and people who have been within that culture, do you think they want to end poverty? Because they would want to be worshipped. The second thing is that poverty has become a gold mine. There's something called I think there is a term for it. Is it activism grifters, where people just anchor on problems in Africa. There are NGOs that are sprouting up that are just there to make money, not necessarily because I run a non-profit, and many times people have come to talk to me about, and I'm like, this is a non-profit, I'm not here to make money, but people say things that make it look like that's the normal thing. You should want some benefits for yourself, and poverty has become a gold mine, and people take advantage of lots of the problems in Africa to make money for themselves. So when poverty is a gold mine, people will not want to end poverty. So that's what I think. So I don't think the problem is that we cannot replicate what is happening in China. I think the problem is that we don't want to replicate what is happening in China. I put Gimba's tweet on the chat box for this space. Thank you.
Yeah, Queen. Let me tell you, there was a tweet I saw a while back where a guy was talking to a guy on a plane, and was talking about cloud computing, and the guy was responding to him, "What if it rains?" Because he thought cloud computing meant rain, cloud, like the rain would fall and the computer would get. He said, "What if it rains?" And what Gimba is saying, Gimba is making a point that there are intellectuals and technocrats holding public offices. He's wrong. He's wrong. Let's pull up the current cabinet of Nigeria. Let's pull them up. Let's look at the educational qualifications. The ministers. Who is the Minister of Education? Who is the Minister of Agriculture? Today, let's pull the cabinet up. Let's compare the cabinet today with the cabinet under Goodluck Jonathan or the cabinet under Olusegun Obasanjo. What's the quality? Do you know how Nigeria got the debt relief? Nigeria is the only country on earth, apart from Iraq, which we know where they got it because the US had gone there. Nigeria is the only oil exporting nation on earth that's gotten a debt relief. Why? Dr. Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala. That's how they got it. We tried, we didn't get it. She went there, packaged all that stuff the World Bank wants to read, and we got it. The same with Mr. Additional, that was former agricultural minister. You saw the impact when he was here. How did he succeed? He knew what to do. He was a square peg in a square hole. Look at the former leader that ran information, the lady that's now Accenture chairman of show, that ran Ministry of Information. Look at her CV, and look at what she also got out of the country. Look at Aganga, Goldman Sachs. Look at how he brought Nigeria into, we got lots of auto companies to set up shop in Nigeria. There is a clear and direct correlation between education and GDP per capita anywhere in the world. And if your civil service is top tier, the country works. The difference between the civil service in Nigeria and the guys abroad it's that they are educated. Go into the civil service in Nigeria and ask for the CVs of the guys that run the civil service in Nigeria. You will also be shocked. What is he talking about, intellectual and technocrat? Who do we have? Let him show me who we have. These are the same. We hear reports that they do promotion exercise and they didn't want to do a promotion exercise. Don't we hear the report here? They don't want to do promotion exercise. I heard a state a state is asking the judges to go and get law degrees. So there were judges without law degrees. So, Queen, the point is that it is not true. There is a failure of governance in Nigeria also because the guys that run governance are also not educated. They're not exposed. They don't understand what the youths want. They are fighting cryptocurrency. They are fighting anything that allows you to express themselves. It's not that they don't want poverty to go away. They want people to be poor. I agree with you. But nobody wants to be poor. Nobody, even the Chinese that are communists, understand that they cannot use the force alone to keep the country quiet. You need jobs. It's a country where we're spending money on churches, on mosques, on fuel subsidy, but not on food and education. That's a lack of education. Education, not that you didn't go to school, is that you cannot look at options and take the right decision. That's education. If you tell me I'm going to spend money on an airport or a school, I will spend money on the school because I'm educated. It has nothing to do with my degree. It's that I understand that an airport and a school, the school will give me a higher and a more broad return on investment than an airport. And that's why you see this stuff going on. So I see his tweet. Gimba is a great guy, but now I disagree. The problem in Nigeria is the low quality of intellectuals and technocrats. Anywhere you see a technocrat running in the MD in Nigeria, you see excellence. Look at the Nigeria around the Nigerian the Center for Disease Control. Excellence. Look at the guy that ran Nigerian Bureau of Statistics, Dr. Kali. Excellence. Look at the guy that ran the NIIT, Nigerian Extractive Industries. Excellence. Look at the lady that ran Federal Internal Revenue Service that is still advising state governments all over the place. Excellence. Whenever you see someone that is good, it shows in their work. The other guy, look at the guy running running labor ministry. Do you see anything excellent there? But he's a son. But do you see anything excellent in what he's doing? Has he tweeted once about labor or creating jobs? No. So it's not education. It is the quality. That guy is low quality. That's why he doesn't tweet about education. So he covers it up by tweeting politics. Get a guy that knows what he's doing, and that ministry will be turned around in 24 hours. Queen, good job. Let's get Akin here. Akin Fatoki, you've got the floor, sir. Akin is busy. Let's get Wumi. Wumi, hey. Wumi, how you doing?
Oh, hi. Thank you, Kali, for giving me this opportunity. So, talking about the Minister of Labour, now the question there is not really about, education. How did someone like that get into a Minister of Labour in the first place if it's
Very
not corruption?
Yeah,
So
very important.
it's not look about competence. It's a matter of they are trying to feed their pocket. It's not a matter of they want the good of the society. In a normal society, right, where they have a lot of qualification, how did someone like, maybe I don't know his name, how did he even get to the point of being a Minister of Labour when for almost 2 years there is nothing, like there is no single tweet, or statistics that shows the employment rate, nothing. So everything still boils down to how did we have someone like that in ministers, in governance? That is the question. Until we're able to solve this problem, until we have this, or we're able to solve the problem of, okay, I want the good for the society, I want the good for the citizen, right? If we want if the government really, really want the good for the citizen, there is no way those people who have no education, like you said, there is no way they can find their way in governance or in the political offices. You understand what I mean?
I mean, Wumi, the Minister of Petroleum in Nigeria for a long time was Dr. Rilwan Lukman. Dr. Rilwan Lukman. He schooled in London. I think he went to Oxford or Cambridge, one of them. That guy was a gentleman. You look at that guy and you just know he had competence. He ran the Ministry of Petroleum for many years. Look at Dr. Ulukoy Ransom Kuti, ran Ministry of Health for many years. Look at Mama Kontagora, ran Ministry of Works for many years. Quality.
But
How many of these guys went to school? So the point is, when there is quality, quality shows. You don't have quality, it shows. So Gimba's point that the technocrat, if you're a technocrat, it will show. If you're a son and they put you as Minister of Labour and all you tweet about from morning to night is politics, that's low quality. It has nothing to do with your son. You are not giving value. At least respect the country. You are a minister of labor in a country that has one of the highest levels of unemployment on earth. You've not tweeted one single thing about labor. One single thing. No, even to pretend. Okay, retweet something about labor. Retweet, just say this is what we're doing. No. Every day it is this man did this man did this man did politics. Help,
Right.
come the on.
That the same thing we are talking about. If you really want the good of the society, how did someone like that, or more amongst all those candidates, how the question is, how did we get so low to appoint someone like that in the government or in the political office? Like how? If it's not corruption, is this corruption? Is because we don't want everyone just want to share from the national cake? That
Yeah.
is why we have someone like that in political offices. Otherwise, if we genuinely want the country to move forward, there is absolutely no reason why we would want or we would have someone like that. Even though his character is so obvious, he's still there. He didn't even resign, and there is no one calling him to order. So it's not a matter of education or what. It's a matter of how did we get to the point that we have someone like that in political office, if indeed we want the good for the community.
This is the point I make, Wumi. I'm agreeing with you, and I'm saying it again here. Quality shows. El-Rufai, he's a controversial guy, but I was in Abuja when he was there. I was in Abuja when he was there. He did good. Whatever you say about the guy, he did good. And they're going to kill me on Twitter. The point is, quality shows. It has nothing to do with education or being an intellectual. If you take a quality guy to a ministry, you will see quality results. That's just it. So anyone that says I am the guys I've called didn't go to school. Some of them didn't go to formal PhD. Mama Kontagara, which university also did he go to? But quality guy. Some guys went to school and you see the work they've done. Look at Larson Kuti, quality guy. So it's not a question of you can do your politics. There are other ministers I see in this administration that do their politics and also do their job. I see many of them. They do their Fashola, he does his politics, he's trying to do his job. There are others that, at least do something now. At least
Right.
pretend. You just can't come and every day, and people are urging him on. Yes, prepare them. And Nigerians, come on. When people are doing wrong, call them out. They have nothing to do with politics. This guy is the minister of labor. He is inept, and he's covering up his ineptitude by doing politics because he knows when he posts politics, people will come in over and praise him. He is not to do more than that. That's my point with the guy. Is to do more than that, not to come and every day abuse people on. Come on, man. All right,
Right.
let me get.
Thank you. Let me say my final point. So, with the issue of eradicating extreme poverty, so even though you take Nigerians to America or to China, they're still gonna mess up the system.
It's not
First
true.
of all,
It's
okay,
not,
first of all, let me quickly land. So, like, the argument I keep tell people, instead of Nigerians japa into UK, right? Now, imagine how many Nigerians. It costs about 10,000, maybe pounds to japa to UK. Instead of one person japa into UK, imagine how many Nigerians have japa to UK. Imagine if every one of us decided, like, let me say, 10 Nigerians jackpot together, decide to use that money. That's about 100,000 euros, right? That 100,000 naira can create a manufacturing company somewhere in Nigeria and at the end of the day, hires a lot of Nigerians, whereby little by little create jobs and everything. But now let us calculate how many Nigerians have jackpot to UK. Imagine those people are patriotic. Imagine those people believe that I want the betterment of this country. Imagine those people come to Nigeria instead of jackpotting, they decide to come together, form
yeah.
partnership, start a manufacturing.
I hear you. Your dogma is correct. If we all stay here like Andrew, make Nigeria better, Nigeria will get better. I hear you. The thing is that when you japa, people leave Nigeria because there are opportunities abroad. If you go to America, there are people from all over the world coming to America, not just Nigerians. If you go to Canada, there are Indians in Canada. There are people from New Zealand in Canada. Where there are opportunities, people will go there. People went to the UK when it was Great Britain. People went to Spain when Spain ruled the world. Like people are going to China today. There are more opportunities outside Nigeria. Just like people leave my village in Ohafia to Lagos because there are more opportunities in Lagos than Ohafia. They love Ohafia, but they've got to feed, they've got to make money and marry. So they have to go to Lagos or Ghana or China or Canada. So Nigeria has got to create a society where people can say, I have an opportunity to make to make it in Nigeria. If you don't, people will go outside the country. Obama left, in fact, Obama's father left Kenya. Obama's son is the president of America. It can't happen anywhere else. Same thing in Nigeria, where if you are from a certain part of Nigeria, things are a bit harder for you. If you go outside the country, do not ask where you're from. You want to go to school in Nigeria, you have to have money. If you go outside the country, you can go to community college for free. So it's just more opportunity. I don't think people hate Nigeria. It's just opportunities with me. That's what I
Right.
found. Yeah.
Right,
So
but Nigerians are not jackpine because of opportunity. At this point, Nigerians are jackpine for survival. So for us to
that's what I'm saying. Wumi, I get you. I have to let you go, but you are right. It's opportunities and survival. Remember, Wumi, our minimum wage has not gone up, but all our costs have gone up. At least if you're in America, at least there's free school, there's free housing. At least, even if you live in a ghetto, at least you can struggle. We had a space the other week, and I said, in America, if you work hard, you will make it. In Nigeria, you can work hard and not make it because you are honest. What keeps you back in Nigeria is that you are honest. And that's a sad reality. If you don't take a bribe, how will a policeman in Nigeria not take a bribe but send his kids to school? Have we asked that question? It's if a policeman has to take a bribe to send his kids to school, then what sort of country are we building? Let me let you go. Gimba,
yeah. Thank you.
you're very well. Gimba, they were gossiping about you. I was not involved.
Yeah,
I was
I
ask anybody. I did not get involved. They were gossiping. I was just telling them, hey, let's not. But Gimba,
yeah,
yeah, go ahead.
I had bits of that, so but I'm not going to respond to any. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. Anyway,
interesting tweet, Gimba.
okay.
Interesting tweet. You are saying that the quality is because that you are saying that it's not the quality of technocrats in the government that makes the country the way it is. Is that what you are saying? That
Yeah, yeah.
I'm agreeing with
I actually want to defend my position
you.
because yeah. First of all, I feel there is some sort of contradiction in your attempt to defend this position that it is the quality of education that reflects on the quality of governance we have. My own reservation here is I think one thing you are trying to point out is that there are individual exceptions, which is quite all right. Because sometimes if you compare the level of education acquired by some of the people doing well and some of the people caught in the act and known to have mismanaged public resources, there is no much difference. They attended the same schools, what stands out is basically one person being more passionate about delivering on governance. So at the end of the day, it boils down to your moral value, your individual character. So it has nothing to do with your quality of education. I'm going to give you just a few weeks ago. One Professor Ibrahim Garba also that was he was former VC at ABU or thereabout. So he was arraigned by the EFCC to have stolen, I think, over $1 billion naira. That was a professor, somebody like a university administrator, somebody tasked with molding our future leaders, somebody tasked with imparting knowledge to the new generation of leaders. That is one. And also, if you look at people like Erufai and SLS, they are exceptional, quite all right. But they attended Nigerian public schools. But some of the people who actually came and fell where they excel were trained at some of the best schools in the world: MIT, LSE. Sorry, I am representing my school. So you get my point. NHIS a while back. I think what's his name? Professor Usman Yusuf, right? Is a sound person,
Yeah.
well educated, internationally exposed, and then he came and was given the task of reforming the NHIS. What happened? The end of his tenure became a corruption scandal that he had to be booted out. But you can't say that this man has no quality education. You just need to listen to him. This man is an accomplished technocrat, no matter the criteria adopted to measure that. You have to give him that. That is one. And we've also had charlatans like Farouk Lawan. Farouk Lawan came, scam an entire nation to rally behind him, to see him as so-called Mr. Integrity. We championed his cause. We celebrated him. In fact, I had to pull down one of the essays I once wrote in defense of his cause. So along the line, somebody like that made a U-turn, and then it became a joke for all those who had supported him. There are people like that, and then there are also stand-up guys, of course, who are reasonably top dogs in their own field, and they did remarkably well. But look at what's his name, Jelani Aliu. You know, like well-celebrated car designer. He came to Nigeria and became nothing. And the problem is, the problem is, there are this ceiling that no matter how hard you try to reform the system, you can't rise above it because the system has already conspired to not go above that. That okay, if you are going to shatter this ceiling, it means that all of us are actually going to face certain consequences we are not ready for, and all are material. So whatever, and I got to a point that I told myself that sometimes instead of having people who are provincial in thinking, people are worried, it's better you have deal makers. Have deal makers that they are actually going to you can't package them as incorruptible, but you can't say they don't know what they are doing. You can't say they are not in tune with the modern time. They would come, they will bring in the multinational corporations, but also they have their own self-serving interest in that. But at the end of the day, the people and also the leader are going to have their own, are going to benefit from whatever is being introduced to the country. But when you bring in somebody who is entirely disconnected from the reality of the world, to manage a complex economy like ours, there is definitely going to be this consequences we are enduring now in the country. But my own point here is that it's really not the quality of education. Okay, let me just give you an instance. There was a period that some presidential aides were sacked by I think that was during the when
Paris start of end of first term.
Yes. So like if you see this guy's CV, you are going to be astonished by the quality of thinking coming out of the presidency. You see people trained at Princeton, people trained at Oxford, people trained at Cambridge. They have quite intimidating CV that like only a few of us can match. And so it got me thinking that okay, if this were the guys advising the presidency, then how did we get here?
Yeah, Kimba, let me ask you a question. Yeah. Do you think it's more of that? Because what we are seeing is that the top guys seem to be good and bad. But my point is that if you peel back the onion, the core of the civil service is not educated, not exposed, not willing to change. So you have a minister come, unless he's brilliant and can fight, I mean literally fight, he's up against a bureaucracy that wants to keep things the way it is. Is that what we're saying?
Okay. Now this is where it gets tricky. The rank and file, the mid-level civil servants, either at state level or at federal level, I will always vouch for them because some of them I have had one-on-one with them, and and I have seen their CV, and to be honest, I can't just like it won't sit well with me to just dismiss these people as ill prepared for their job. They know what they are doing, but at the end of the day, they they formulate beautiful policy and send them to these guys at the top, and then it gets kicked out. So the problem has always been implementation, but the quality of thinking, quality of policy, it has always been outstanding. We have in fact, we have quite impressive policies, even in this government, that at the end of the day were not implemented. So nobody cares,
Gimba,
and nobody,
Gimba,
yeah.
the point again is that Nigeria doesn't seem to do big projects properly. Once it's a big project, we can't do it.
Okay,
Refineries,
yeah. Let
sectors,
me give you
election,
the strangest
every
example now. The former chief of staff to the president was Cambridge Trent. The present chief of staff to the president was trained at Columbia, and LSC. You know, and also he had also taught at Columbia. So in fact, you can count the number of public servants or the number of Nigerians of any affiliation who can actually match this man's CV. So the point I'm trying to make is this guy sieve the information getting to the president. This guy is the president gatekeeper. This guy has the power to meet the president and advise him on what is doing wrong and right. So like what level of education, what level of advice would go beyond what Gambari can actually offer Buhari? So
Does Buhari listen to? Is the question. When was he appointed? When was Gambari appointed? It wasn't appointed from day one.
no.
He was
Yeah.
appointed.
Okay. No. Okay. Let's not even talk about Gambari. Let's talk about Abakari. Abakari
He's dead.
is no less intellectual. Abakari has had
Is it
quite an
the late Abakari? The late Abakari?
yes. The late Abakari. He was trained at Cambridge, and he had the best of education too. Quite an
Okay.
outstanding technocrat. He had been in the banking sector, lawyering, and then, like so there are so many sides to him.
Does Buhari listen to them?
Now I think that is the point I have been trying to make. That there are quite sound guys who formulate policies, who advise the guys that make that decision. But at the end of the day, they don't want to implement their ideas. Why? Because this is the arrangement that pays. If Nigeria begins to work, if Nigeria begins to function, these guys at the top are going to suffer. And they don't want that to happen. So that has been our problem all this while. So, but me, I
Okay.
will never ever take that these guys are incompetent or ill-prepared for their job. They know what they are doing. They are sound. They are well educated. But the functioning of the country has never been their priority because all of them know
Well,
they are going to suffer.
but not all of them. I asked the direct question. I mean, who is the Minister of Education? Do you know him? Do you know where he schooled?
Okay.
Does he
Here is the thing.
then
Here is the thing. As a child, I have known this guy since I have been reading Adamu since I was in primary school. Like my dad used to buy newspapers. He actually had a column called Definition in Humor in New Nigerian. That was in the 90s. And our dad used to bring his newspaper. So he was one of the earliest people who inspired me to start writing because he writes beautifully. Is a decent pro stylist, and I grew up idolizing him. And then even when he was made education minister, because I had seen the quality of his thoughts, and this is somebody, and do you know, I like this guy because one, he was one of those lone voices in northern Nigeria who challenge who who challenged the clerical establishment, who took on a religious extremist, and then he was called names. He was branded Shiite, and he was kind of like a pariah in northern Nigeria intellectual cycle. So he was courageous as an intellectual. So when he was made education minister, I was one of the people who wrote in defense of him. But less than 2 years after that, I just realized that it was a terrible mistake. So my position now is a terrible administrator, but as a thinker, as an ideologue, as an intellectual, this guy is a first-rate intellectual. I would give him that. But he has failed
Gotcha.
woefully.
What about the Minister of Agriculture? The one that was.
To be honest, even at gunpoint, I don't even know who that is.
So, Giba, you see, the point I'm making is that, like, in the end, its policy is personnel. In the end, policy is personnel. And the thing about Buhari is that he has surrounded himself with people he knows, that he knows that, and don't talk back to him. That's his failing. For 8 years he refused to remove fuel subsidy. I'm sure he realized the mistake today. He refused to devalue the naira. The naira was devalued when Buhari was in London and Osinbajo was the president. That's when we had the export-import window. If we didn't have export-import window by today, naira would be what? We wouldn't have seen naira. So Buhari has failed that he didn't surround himself with people that could tell him the truth and he would listen to them. That's his own failing. And when you say you are a Cambridge guy, Cambridge gives you the confidence to say something and stand by it. I don't think a real one, Lukman, will not tell Buhari that we should not remove subsidy. What's he afraid of? But the guys that they have here are afraid. Oh, if we tell you remove from our job, we can't tell this guy the truth. So they just hide behind and they go with the flow.
Yeah,
that's what's going on.
But we are saying the same thing here.
Yeah.
Yeah, because like my earlier point was that these guys are more comfortable with the current arrangement because they don't want to disrupt the status quo. So that has always been the problem.
Okay. But given my point, I want to last point. If I let Laura speak, Wale and Dress answer. Last point is that the quality of the Nigerian civil service is low. This is my point. The federal state, the quality of the Nigerian civil service is low. The civil service in Nigeria is a place where you send unemployed relatives to get a job. That's the point I'm making. It is no longer. It's no longer a place where you write an exam and the top 1% go and work for the Nigerian civil service. Right now, we see everything now. Immigration will do interview. People will go with white t-shirt, go and all that, and they get employed based on who they know, notes and all that. We see it every day. This Nigerian civil service used to be an elite institution where the very best work. You can't say so today. I'm talking about the rank and file, not the ministers, the rank and file. It is a place where if you are a big man, you get employment for your words. That's what the civil service is today.
I still want to disagree with you, but I think I'll just let it fly because I know some of the guys recruited into these sensitive organizations, like NNPC, for instance. They don't take anybody like you. I like it's merit based, like for a while now. Like most of the guys running things there now, especially the younger generation, are first class and two degree holder
MDA.
and CBN.
I agree. Civil service, the Ministry of Ministry of Petroleum, DPR.
Yeah,
that's what I'm going to. Those guys, the ministry. That's NNPC is like an MDA.
Okay, DPR too has quite outstanding guys working for them, and because I've come across.
We'll have to let that go. Let me get that. We'll have to let that go. Give back. You're free to hang around.
Okay, all right then. All right. Okay, yeah. Okay.
Wale, you've got the floor, sir. Wale.
Thank you very much. How now, Kalu? Good evening, everyone. So, you started off this conversation with China.
Yes.
And how we can sort of copy their model and all, stuff like that. Yes. I've always been a very big proponent that, regardless of a model that we try to copy from any part of the world, when you bring it here, it won't work. And you see, my premise goes as far back as 1960. I've sort of looked at Nigeria since creation, sort of asked myself, what is the one thing that sort of unites us as a people? What brings us together? What exactly motivates us as a people? If I ask everybody in this room, they're going to write different things. And that is why you're having this long drawn conversation with Gimba, because the Nigerian, we don't have anything that pulls us together as a nation. So if you go and bring a model, that they use in China, and I purposely put something in the comment section about the Chinese mindset. We don't have a mindset here that is sustainable, hence our problems. So we may have a smart minister today, we may have a smart governor the next day, 2 years, 4 years down the line, the whole thing goes. So until we have something that, regardless of the people that you put in that role, the output will remain the same. And the private sector has mastered this over years. This is what the private sector does. The private sector will tell you, regardless of who is in that role, they need to function. Therefore, they build all those sustainability issues into the things they do. In governance in Nigeria, we have managed to put individuals there and then rely on the individuals. It won't work. I've always been a very big proponent of developing some sort of nation brand. And the mistake a lot of Nigerians make is all of the countries we run to across the whole world, this is the one thing that they have all done quietly. And that's what keeps them together as a people. Read about it. Nation branding. Just read about it. Humor me. All of those countries, not an exception. The reason I know this was because I was involved in nation branding for Indonesia. This was in 2016. I'll never forget. Life-changing experience for me. We're similar to Indonesia. They speak many languages than we do. They're even more scattered and more diverse than we do. What was the one thing that they could do? They created an identity. Now, I've always said, until we're able to craft an identity and we could wrap it around anything, you see, the way you do it, you wrap it around something that you have an economies of scale around. So, for instance, in Nigeria today, what do we have? We have the youth. We're 70% young people. You create a brand wrapped around the youth. The way that, in fact, there's a methodology around this. We can, as a country, my God, what it means is that every single thing you do as a Nigerian, from governance to infrastructure to whatever it is, you rely on that brand. And you see, again, let me give you a classic example. If you look at UAE, for instance, the overall thing about UAE is now what? They sell oil like us. It's now tourism and real estate. And they are making tons of money from it. Because if you look at that whole country, just pick Dubai out of it. You see the way Dubai is structured. Once you get to the airport, fantastic. Once you step out of the airport, all those white Mercedes-Benz taxis are waiting. Once they carry you, they're taking you to those hotels. And if you look across that value chain, you see money. From the hotels, they are taking you to the desert. Money. You will carry bird on your hand. Money. You will ride, what is it? Camel. Money. You will ride those cars. Money. Until we're able to think and come up with, that thing that matters, that calls you a Nigerian. This is our natural strength as a country, as a people, as a unified people. We will continue to look for these bright individuals, whether Harvard, whether Oxford, whatever it is. They will come, they will do their bit, and they will go, and then we'll go right back to square one. So I'm very big on being able to do things in a sustainable manner. And like I said, I've gone all the way back to 1960. So I've said, look, what have we been able to do in Nigeria and sustain it till today? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. I'm interested if anybody can tell me one single thing we've managed to do. Nothing. If you look at the country today, the only thing we've managed to create as a country is anyhowness. And that's what we're known for. That's what we're known for. At which point is somebody going to say, look, I'm the CEO of this country. Therefore, this is the mindset. Because this nation brand that I've mentioned, it is one man. If you go to Singapore too, same thing. Just Google Singapore nation branding. It's all there. One man just decided, look, enough. We've had enough of this nonsense.
Yeah.
you know, this is how we need to think. And then they went in that direction.
Yeah, and Wale, I hear you, and I think we're nearly there in the 70s. Even when we did this Operation Feed the Nation, all these things, we're nearly there.
God bless you.
Then something happened, and then we sort of lost our way. We got back into this American. We were British, now we're American. Now we're going to be Chinese. That's how I see Nigeria. And so
God
I think
bless you.
the youth, the main thing is that the youth now are about 60% of the population. They have their own ideas. Like I said, when we're talking about China, right now, whoever is going to be president is going to have, I would say, about 6 months, irrespective of whatever party you call yourself. They're going to give you about 6 months. If wealth does not start to flow, whether you are APC, Labour, PDP, you will see something will happen.
It really doesn't matter. Absolutely.
People are like, I think people are saying, okay, this election, there's going to be a change. Let's see what's going to happen. I'm not being political. I'm just saying the truth. The economy is burnt. People are suffering, but they've pinned their hopes that there will be a change. It doesn't matter if it's change from this alphabet or that alphabet. They want a change, and they want to see delivery of that change. So you have a very, very short time. So I'm just going to advise whoever's in charge, you have a short time. People don't have time for a master plan 2050. People want to see jobs, wealth, cheap food, security. They want to see if you going there. That okay, we're going to right now. I'm getting 10,000. I'm going to get 30,000. I'm going to get 90,000. I can. The bandits are going to be destroyed. There is food. They want to see those things. The youth are now the driving force. All this you want to ban protests. You want to ban how all that is just superficiality, right? Keep your head low. Like this space is on purpose. When I say China, it's on purpose. What did China do? Rural areas, wealth creation, land use act reform, allowing wealth to be created. China just simply said, share your land. It's your land. This is a communist country, but they said it is your land. If you don't want to use it, lease it out. Nigeria can do the exact same thing. Nigeria can say to the youth, you have land in your village, Abi. That land is for you. We're going to do land use act. That land is your land. You can take that land, you can lease it to Dangote, and Dangote will pay you. Do it for even minerals. You have a mineral, you have in your town, you have bitumen, Abi. That bitumen is for you. Lease it out to the Chinese. Let the Chinese pay you. You get the youth now access to sovereign wealth. A company. Now the Chinese are going to deal with the youth, give them equity. They get money. All that pipeline busting stops. Those boys now have a stake in this thing called Nigeria. This idea of federal, everything is federal. Do a radical change, do a radical rethink, get the youth on board into this country, give them this wealth, let them see a plan, a focus, and a direction, get them involved, then you've won. Otherwise, I don't know. Well, I don't know. Let me get Akin in here. Akin, what's up, man? Akin?
Yes. So I've been listening to everything everyone has been saying, and I would say some things now that's probably going to annoy people on different sides of this argument. There's so many reasons why China has been able to get to the level that it's got to, and a good chunk of it, for better and also for worse too, has partly been the fact that it's a one-party state. It has also partly been it hasn't had to face elections. It has also partly been its Confucian ethos of of the respect of the civil service. It has also partly been the fact that the Confucian ethos of civil service and respect for bureaucrats have led to generally better level of public administration. Then that has also led to better policy making, and that was facilitated by having the little giant called Deng Xiaoping that was able to basically collate and be able to coordinate all this machinery of the Chinese states to bring in unprecedented development that has never been seen in human history, at least at this scale and at this speed. Now, Nigeria does not have these things. We are a society where we believe that diversity trumps competence. So we talk a lot about federal character. Most people on this space, in fact, a lot of people that probably have talked would believe in some form of federal character of some sort. I don't believe in it one bit. I think it's one of the things that's holding us as a country. I don't understand why, as a country, we have a situation where people that have no business being in the civil service or being in government agencies are there because they have to fill a quota because of diversity. I don't believe you should put diversity before competence. Diversity must always be subservient to competence. These are very radical views in Nigeria. Nigerians don't want to hear this. We believe we can get both diversity and also get competence. It's possible to get both, but it is not in every situation that you can get both. You have situations where we have NDDC and they will go and bring somebody from Ogun State or from some random part of the southwest to come and join the board of NDDC. What does somebody that's worked in Ogun State, and by the way, Ogun State is my home state, what does somebody in Ogun State know about development in the Niger Delta? What is their lived experience? Or you see, even sometimes they'll bring somebody from the Niger Delta that happens to be a governor to become head of NDDC, even though he has no track record of improving development in the oil-rich regions of his states when he was governor. Just because, okay, we must have somebody, it is not based on competence, on can you do the job. I know some people here will say there's the whole thing of leadership. Leadership, when coupled with irresponsible and incompetent bureaucrats or civil service people or incompetent mandarins, will not show through. That is one thing that a lot of people don't realize. People just say, "Oh, leadership. Oh, we have a problem with leadership. Leadership this, leadership that." If the civil service itself is faulty, and I will be one of those people that will argue that the civil service in Nigeria is seriously faulty.
It is. I agree
Anybody
with you.
that is telling you, oh, it is that is not that bad, they are just sugarcoating the reality on ground. I have had situations where I've had to interact with civil servants in certain parts of this country on projects, and I will tell you the quality of even the top civil servants in a lot of states in this country is woeful. It is nothing to write home about. They have no business being anywhere close to governments in any way. So when I hear Gimba say, "Oh, it is not so bad," or that we should not be mischaracterizing them, that all of that. Sorry, the civil servants in Nigeria, the vast chunk of people, there's a problem. Then also there's also a problem of remuneration, because they are good civil servants, but when you don't pay people their salaries on time, see what is going on in Plateau State. Plateau State is owing almost 4 years worth of salaries. How do you
How
expect
can you
somebody to work?
how can you owe year's
Yes,
salary? How?
yes. How do you expect somebody to work for 4 years and you're
But
not paying them?
they're getting FARC money every month,
Yes,
but they're owing for salary.
it's ridiculous. It's criminal. This is also the same thing in your
All
state
right.
to Kalu. It's the same thing in your state
Yeah,
where they are
my
owing
I
doctors
had a
2 years worth of salaries.
no, my state is in the hands of God. So we've given up. So but now
In
we have
Osun
a
State, they are still owing salaries up until 3 years ago. It is just now that the dancing governor is trying to clear the backlog of what Aregbe and the likes have done, the monumental disaster that they've left in that state. So the thing is, Nigerians and Nigeria, and so the thing is, some people will say, "Oh, that maybe I'm being, I'm exaggerating when I say that it's partly because there are no elections." I will tell you why I say that it's partly because there are no elections. If the Communist Party of China had to go to the Chinese public to get consent for the radical reforms that they did in the 1970s, in the 1980s, I'm telling you, they would have lost.
Yeah, but look at it this way. Look at it this way, Akin. The George Bush Act, was it G, not G, the one guy before G. George Bush asked him, what keeps you up
Hu
at night? The
Jintao,
guy
Hu
said,
Jintao.
yeah, wow. He said creating 25 million jobs every year. They don't have elections in China, but they work for the people. He was essentially telling George Bush that if I don't create 25
They
million
have a
jobs
problem on
every
their
year,
hands. Yes.
correct, if the military cannot
Mm.
save me. In Nigeria,
And the thing,
in Nigeria,
and the
the,
thing
the
about
mindset
China,
is
sorry, historically, what has usually brought governments down in China, right from the Han Dynasty to the Qing Dynasty, have been civil unrest. It's not usually guys on the street with guns and all of that, as it happens in Nigeria and some other places. It's basically people in the rural areas coming out, and the revolt happens, and then a civil war somewhere. If you look at human history, the Chinese have so account for, I think, the top 5 out of the top 10 bloodiest civil wars in history. It's always been
I
labor
let me make this
unrest.
point. I want to get out to speak, Akin. Let me just make this point
Yeah.
again, just very, very clear. Just make this point. When you read the book here, the book I'm reading is the World Bank. I put the titles on the page in case you're interested. It says that it was the Chinese government that allowed the citizens to lease out their land and make money. I watched a video where it was actually the Chinese peasants that were dying of hunger
Yes.
that basically F it, and they started the policy of leasing out their own land, growing their own food,
Yeah.
and selling surplus. They did it on their own. But what did the Chinese government do? They allowed it.
Yeah.
They copied
Yeah.
and asked every other person to do it. That's the governance we're talking about. It's an administration that is very flexible,
Mm.
feel the pulse of the nation, and can move with what's happening. Right now in Nigeria, I make this statement all the time. We have a spending problem, not an earnings problem. Explain to me that this country is broke, but you are buying fire trucks 10 billion. There's nothing wrong with buying fire trucks. But is that the pulse of the nation right now that want to buy 10 fire trucks? They are building a clubhouse for 400 million naira. You are doing internet at the airport for 21 billion. Is that what the pulse of the nation is saying? People are hungry and you are doing internet
Exactly.
at 21 billion. This is the difference with us and you. So I'm saying we should copy the way they focus on what their citizens want. That's one thing Nigeria can copy from China. Even if you are a communist guy with the protection, think about guy on the street. Let me get guys in here if you don't mind while it is. Lots of guys want to
Okay.
say, yeah. Crikey, where did it all go? Hold on, give me a sec. Mr. Zaki Yankawa. I'm sorry if I pronounced your name wrong. I do apologize. Zaki, go ahead, sir. You've got the floor.
Yeah, hello, Kali. Yeah, good evening, everybody. Yeah, I've been listening to the
Zaki, you're
debate.
not too audible. Sorry.
Can you
Zaki,
hear me
I
now?
do apologize. Not too audible.
Can you hear me?
Let me get Sir X. Zaki, could you just get out? You're not too audible. Zaki, sorry about that. Sir X, SAIKS. Igudu. I can't pronounce these names, man. IKTG20.
Good
Sir
evening. Good evening.
IKS. Go ahead, sir.
Good evening. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for the privilege to speak
Oh,
in
is
your
it me?
platform.
Zach,
Okay.
your audio is bad. I'm so sorry about that. Your audio is very bad.
Can you hear me now?
Ah, jeez, man. Is it me? Suleiman. Suleiman, let's try you, sir.
Good evening, everyone.
I think I'm having maybe it's me having technical issues. Wale, can you hear me clearly?
Yeah, I can hear you, but for some reason you can't hear the chat.
I can hear them, but it's kind of wobbly. I'm not sure if it's me.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, Kalu, can you hear me? Zaki,
I
can
can
you
hear
hear Zaki?
I can hear you. Is that Suleiman or Zaki?
Zaki speaking.
Zaki, please go ahead, sir. Suleiman, hang on.
Okay, yeah. Good evening, everybody. Yeah. I was listening to the conversation, and particularly interesting. I listened to the one particularly by Wale, which is quite interesting. There is something very fundamental with Nigeria, and this is why we are where we are, because we have everything revolves around our education and leadership. You see, in Nigeria, we give too much emphasis on examinations instead of character building. And what it touched on the reason why we don't have a common agenda, and the part of development of character as part of education system would deal with such issues as character building, accountability, patriotism, nation building, national orientation, and a common agenda. And if we're able to get our educational system, the basis right, instead of more focus on passing exams and move towards building the characters of our students, we'll almost be halfway in dealing with the situations we are. I heard you at the beginning talk about Gimba talk about civil service. It is very important. If you look at the British civil service, almost 70% of the first tier of the civil service in the UK come from Cambridge and Oxford. And that is important. There's a reason why that is so. And then secondly, somebody talked about federal character. Federal character there's nothing wrong about federal characters. In every state in Nigeria, you can get the best in every state. But when Buhari came to power, he had pushed all these things aside and based his appointments on who he knows. Basically,
Hello.
Hello.
Go ahead.
Okay.
Or some.
Yeah. You
No,
said something about talking about
you
having.
got to hold on with
Hello,
me.
yeah.
Go ahead, Zaki.
Yeah. So Buhari basically negated the fact that from every state he could make appointment based on competence, but appointed charlatans from these states, people who he knew that could not go against the grain of his thinking. And this is why for the past 8 years, Nigeria has been almost a disaster completely. So to make to cut matters short, what Wallace said, we have to orientate our people towards a common agenda, because Nigerians should begin to think about Nigeria first before thinking that I am a Yoruba person or Igbo or Hausa. Nigeria should be our main focus.
That's gonna be hard, bro, Saki. That's gonna be
But if
it's
we
hard because the same guys that you are asking to change it are the same guys that this last election was very, very raw. I won't lie. It was very, very raw election. Lots of things were said, lots of things were tweeted. And I don't know if we can put that genie back in the bottle. We've always had political elections, but this particular one was very, very raw.
Yeah, that's right, Kalu. Until we get this right, then we will only be tinkering with the problem. Until we get our national identity as Nigerians first. Because if we think along those lines, we will build a Nigeria for everybody, irrespective whether you're Tiv,
I got
Yoruba, Hausa, Fulani.
All right, I hear you. And let's not forget, guys, what we're trying to talk about is China. I think I don't want to. I get where we're going to. It's very important to topics we're having now. But I think the point again is that China has taken 800 million folks out of poverty from 1978 to 2021, eliminated extreme poverty. They've done it by a focus on rural areas, or focus on land reform, or focus on education before they even went to the coastal cities and started to do the industrialization. What can we learn? That's actually where I'm going to. What can Nigeria do? Because we're doing like a template for whoever's going to take charge. How can we turn around a nation of Nigeria with 200 million people, youth 60%, high unemployment, high inflation, high food prices? What can the nation do essentially? What can we call these guys that have done it? And that's really where I want us to go to on this. Suleiman, you can go back on the floor. So you've got the floor. Suleiman, thank you so much. If I take you off, guys, it's just because to create more space to add folks. Nothing wrong. Just if I take you off, just to create more folks to speak. Suleiman, you got the floor, sir. Go ahead.
All right. Good evening, everyone.
All right, Suleiman is a bit busy. Let's get Ramsey. Ramsey, come in here. Ramsey, go ahead. You've got the floor. Guys, we're going to shut down about maybe 10 minutes or so. Ramsey?
Can you hear me?
Go ahead, sir. You've got the floor.
Yeah, I think someone was trying to speak. It looks as you cannot hear him.
Oh, I didn't hear him. Was it Suleiman speaking? I didn't hear him.
Yes.
Okay, Suleiman, go ahead. Ramsey, when it's done, let me know when it's done. I can't hear you, Suleiman, so go ahead.
Okay, Suleiman, he says you should go ahead.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yeah, he cannot hear you, but other people can hear you. Go ahead.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for having me here. I want to talk about number one, about the civil service. I think the main problem that we're having in our civil service sector is the lack of passion with many Nigerians to work. And most people apply for job to get the job, not to work the way they are supposed to, not to work according to the rules, or to take the country to where we supposed to be, but just to get money. So the thing is, number one, our fundamental problem is the mindset. People are getting into the civil service just to get money for themselves and their family. That's all. And I agree with Gimba when he said there are people that they know no one at the top, but they are getting jobs in a very fantastic agencies. That one is true because me myself, I know some people that got job without knowing anyone. They just apply, go to the interview, and at the end they got the job. The problem is we are not doing it with passion. That's number one. And number two, about the policies. We have very beautiful policies in Nigeria. It's not the policies that
okay,
is.
Ramsey, I think I see Suleiman has dropped off. Has he stopped speaking? Because I couldn't hear him. But I see he has dropped off. So I'm assuming he's gone off.
Suleiman is still speaking, but I think no one can hear him now.
All right, no worries. Let me get you, Ramsey. Ramsey, go ahead and speak.
Okay, all right. The topic is about China. I know you cannot speak of China eradicating poverty and without talking about Nigeria, because we are Nigerians. The first thing, if you observe China, the people work hard. The leadership are accountable, even though they have no reason to be accountable to the people. They are delivering service to the people, even though they have no reason, because the people do not vote them. The Communist Party members vote themselves. They select themselves to be, to continue. And the system they are using. Once you want to become a member of the Communist Party, you write a letter explaining why you want to join. They will send you to a remote village to go and work there, and then as you improve, you get promotion to come out to the to small town, to big city, and then to the national. But in Nigeria, is that, and then let me mention their civil service and university. You have to study hard. People study like almost 24 hours to get into universities in China and to get into their civil service. They write exams. I don't know why someone said that we shouldn't write. It's not about writing exams. No, you have to know, you want to be a top engineer, you have to pass exams. The character is molded by punishment through the law enforcement. It's not but in Nigeria, we reward people who do not want to study. We say it is, what do they call it? Not the quota yet. Educationally advantaged. No, you have the same brain cells, and then we give someone to be admitted into university with 1 credit and 20 in a certain subject in JAM. The same goes for all the federal secondary schools, and then they move to civil service. The same thing. People should write exams, and the character should be molded by reward system. You do good, you break the law, you get punished, and people will sit up. But in Nigeria, no. The people who break the law are being used by our leaders, and our leaders are not accountable. They don't want to be accountable. Not that we should be at the level with China, I know, but we always find excuse. We can be at some level, at some. We can be at some level, not necessarily with China. There's no reason that we shouldn't have electricity in every village today. There is no reason we shouldn't have pipe-borne water in all the major cities, at least major cities running. So, and it's just an excuse. And no, the whatever we put internet in the airport, there is no way it costs half of the money they're declaring. No way. But anyway,
I got you,
I don't
Ramsey.
want to
No worries.
just drag on because a lot of people have so many things to say. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Let me get Toyib. Toyib Adewale Adelodu. How are you doing? Hey,
Hi,
Toyib.
Obakalo, I can hear you. Good evening.
Yeah, I can hear
Yeah,
you.
I can hear you.
It's a bit low,
It's a
but
bit
go ahead.
low, but go ahead. Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you to all the previous speakers. Very, very important topic we are having here. How can Nigeria, I mean, Africa as a whole, replicate what has happened in China? First of all, very, very important points have been made. And one of the turning points, I think Akin was making very, very important point about Deng Xiaoping and the kind of mind he had in reforming China. And one of the first things that he did was being in charge of education. I think if we have a very, very strong primary and secondary education where we are actually being taught what we are meant to be taught, we wouldn't worry too much about university. A lot of people will be coming out of both primary and secondary education with good enough skills to be able to contribute to the society. And one thing we need to look at critically is our population growth. Can we sustain this exponential growth of population? Because we are looking at 2050, Nigeria is probably going to hit 400 to 500 million people. We are being hypocritical about it. Everybody is silent about it. We want to continue having as much babies as possible without, if we are struggling now at 200 million, and we are not using up our land. We are not, you go to countries where they are landlocked and they are finding ways to fertilize their land. Nigeria has two major rivers passing through us, and we cannot irrigate our land to farm. We have one of the highest percentage of arable land in the world, and we are still struggling to feed ourselves. It's a very, very difficult discussion we have to have with ourselves. Like I was in Madeira recently, and it's an island. And what they did is that they did terrace farming, so that every step of that island, you see a place where they are planting potatoes, you see a place where they are planting bananas. As the temperature cools, they are taking advantage of every part of that island because they don't have any. And I'm now thinking of Nigeria, like, we have this much land and we are not even able to feed ourselves. So those are one of the key things we look at, because China had one child policy when they saw that population was going to overgrow, and recently they turned it to two-child policy. Recently they turned it to three-child policy. Are we ready to have this discussion with ourselves and say, look, if you cannot afford to have as much babies, what are you going to do about it? Because it's gross irresponsibility what some of us are doing, having so much babies and not knowing what to do about it. That is number one. Number two, we talked about decentralization of power recently. Hopefully, every state can start working on power. But India has overtook China in terms of population. It's been reported recently, 1.4 billion plus. But India is also doing installation capacity of about 400,000 megawatts. They are saying most of the population are connected to the grid. Before we even talk about China, let us even come close to India first in terms of what India has done. India has done a digital identification scheme that has about 90%, more than 90% of the population are digitally registered with fingerprint and eye scan. We have struggled to have a full database of our 200 million people. All what we have been using is gross estimate. We cannot say we want to provide for Nigerians when we don't even know how many Nigerians exist. So there is quite a lot of discussions we need to have for us to even come near China. What are we doing about our land? What are we doing about education? What are we doing about tourism? What are we doing about security? There is so much on the ground. And this issue of us like sweeping the truth under the carpet, transparency in terms of the kind of people that run our government. Are they declaring how much they are worth? Do we actually know how much our senators earn? Do we actually know how much the local government chairman earns? All these pension bits that just sneaks into the news and sneaks out.
Yeah.
Our governance is too expensive for a poor country like us. It's just ridiculous that we are not having the painful discussions. We are sweeping it under the carpet and hoping it will change. If we don't
Yeah.
have those discussions, we are really, really not ready. Thank
But
you.
I mean, the point I want to make again is this, right? It's possible. It is possible to lift, even if it's 50 million Nigerians out of poverty. It's possible to do it. And that's the why I'm choosing China. India, fine. When Singapore is there. Like I said again, 1960, Nigerians on a per capita basis were richer than the Chinese. 1973, the Chinese sent engineers to Nigeria to study the overhead bridges in Lagos that were built by Julius Berger. So things have changed. They've gone from being poor to being exceedingly rich. They now lend us money. Now we can't do any infrastructure project without China. So the point of this piece is that it's possible that any government that wants to eradicate poverty and lift Nigerians out of poverty can do it. That's the point we want to establish. It's not an issue of we are too many or our oil reserves can't go round. It's possible. China didn't use oil reserves to take billions of people out of poverty. They used rural agriculture, they used education, they used land reforms, even before they went to the industrialization by the seas. So it is possible. Gospel, you've got the floor. Go ahead, sir. So, Gospel, I've got you here. After Gospel, we'll have Sadiq, then we'll have Mr. Adebayo. Gospel, go ahead, sir. Can you hear me? All right, Gospel. Let's get Sadiq. Sadiq, go ahead, please.
Hello, everyone.
How you doing?
I'm doing great. Just want to say a big clap to all the speakers, Gimba, Wale, and the last speaker, Toiba. So I think I'll just quickly touch on one thing which Gimba mentioned. I think he mentioned about he gave credit to the public service, which is in as much as you will give credit, I think what everyone would like to see is to see a certain 110 level of transparency. You know, if people get recruited out of merit, I think we'd like to see like a very transparent recruitment and whatnot afterwards. So everyone is kind of everyone gets to know that this is possible, and as such gives people some kind of hope, and then And then I think to go into the topic of like why China is where it is, I'm no China expert, I would say, but if I can start to like just put a couple of points quickly, I would say the idea of nationalism is really something that we've lacked as a country. You know, we're always between religious and tribal divides, and that's something that's really really missing. I mean, if you take China out of the equation and if you bring Europe also, it's basically Europe also was able to come together after like hundreds of years of divide to carve an identity for itself, which is out of nationalism. So that's one very missing factor. And then if you move away from that, if you look at the concept of industrialization, you need to be able to have a setup that aims to create jobs by creating things out of value. Either maybe you create them from scratch or you explore your already natural resources that you have and get them to a finished product. So you get to create a lot of jobs within that value chain. And that's a way to move people out of poverty. Or you get to find a certain kind of industry that involves, even if it means just like getting order certain kind of like parts and create a kind of like assembly sort of like, you know, industry, which also gets to kind of move people out of poverty. Now China has been able to do this very well. India positioned itself as a kind of IT hub, which became a large part of like global IT outsourcing country, and they got to do that and position themselves to start to be able to generate wealth and like move people out of poverty. If you take Israel for example, Israel was able to position itself strategically to become one of the global hubs for surveillance technology or military technology and whatnot, you know. And as such they are able to you know, move people out of poverty, create wealth, and become relevant in Middle East. Turkey is a place where I lived for a while. I saw the transformation that's happened in Turkey, where they got to create a kind of enabling environment, and they became like this sort of like country where major companies around the world, they come around and then they set up like manufacturing facilities, and then they get to manufacture stuffs with a lot of advantage, I mean cheaper, but then again they get to also lift their citizens out of you know, poverty, or move them to another economic of scale. Vietnam also positioned themselves for this. I've seen that in Vietnam. Indonesia also have done that for themselves. African countries like Egypt and Morocco have also like capitalized on that. Now, if you move into Europe, Poland is a country that's also capitalized on like other countries coming up to set factories, and then you can call Hungary and now Slovakia. So, in essence, what I think I'm trying to say is, yes, we're an economy that's based on like oil and other untapped natural reserves and stuff, natural resources and
Yeah, good.
stuff. But I think one very key factor, which is quite essential, is the ability to be able to manufacture something or at least assemble something
I
and
get
then try. Uh,
Sadiq, hear
yeah.
you. Sadiq, I hear you. And again, completely, I think you're fantastic and correct. But again, the point again I want us to drill down is that China did this without manufacturing anything, right? They just focus on their people. You know, hey, we have 70% of our people work in agriculture. They are
Yeah.
poor. Food is expensive. Let's reform taxes. Let's reform land rules. Let's reform agriculture. Let's fund agriculture. We create wealth there. That's what they did first. Let's educate people. So everyone was educated. Again, they were communists. Everyone was educated. Everyone had land. There was security. So I think that point, I completely agree with everything you said. But again, I want
If,
us to be clear that
if
it's
I will, yeah, sorry.
go for it.
Sorry, if I would go back to that China, so there is a lot of like ideological transformation which is essential. I don't know if a lot of people here are conversant with the new Chinese work model, the 996 model. So basically, from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m., 6 days in a week, and this for them is what gives them meaning to their life. And this is the current Chinese work model, especially in like tech hubs. So for you to have like people to be quite motivated to want to like put in this effort and get them in the same direction, nationalism starting from there is key.
Good point. Good point. I
You
get what you're doing with that. Good point. I see that. Good point. Let me get Rosemary Masuba. Hi, Rosemary. How you doing? I hope you can hear me. Sadiq, thanks a lot.
Thank you as well.
All right. Rosemary, you've got the floor.
Thank you, Carlo. My name is Rosemary. I'm from Kenya, based in the US. I joined because I saw your name and I love the work that you do, the advice that you give out. But I am hearing more of Nigeria, Nigeria, Nigeria. I think let's widen it to the whole of Africa. There are a few elements that are really positive from Africa. What I was expecting from you, and respectfully, is why should we should identify what is ailing Africa, look at the best practices and see how we can, probably use the same template. What is happening, the good things coming out of Kenya, not everything is good, good things coming out of Nigeria. I have always admired my brothers and sisters from Nigeria because you lead, we follow. And, stand up to that. I was hoping I could get some few accolades on that. Really, at the end of the day, we need to appreciate our people who are doing well. Those who are not doing well, let us try to find a way of uplifting them. One of the things, even when I'm on these Twitter spaces, is that I've always challenged my kinspeople in Kenya. How many of us who live outside, abroad and elsewhere, go back to our own communities, our schools, the rural community, and give back? This is how you empower people. In my own family, I try to encourage them. If I'm mature, I'm a senior citizen. But, if I was to redo my life now, I would never be employed. I would actually start off some little business, look at the passion that you have and really push yourself. Sometimes you fall down, like President Obama says, but pick yourself up, dust off. And, China, I'm not very familiar what they've done. I mean, they also have their big problems on human rights and what have you. But our biggest problem in Africa is corruption. Damn corruption. I have worked on peacekeeping, and everywhere you go in Africa is poverty, poverty, poverty. And the divide is just between two people, very, very poor and very, very rich. I've been to Abuja and all those places, and you see people have 3 living rooms, sitting room 1, 2, 3. You don't need all that. So let me rest here. All I'm giving you, Carlo, is just challenge. Let's pick up some of the best elements from Africa. How can we eradicate poverty? Poverty, we've talked about it 100 years. Thank you.
I think you're right. Yeah, and again, I take your comments and I take the your feedback in good faith. Yes, I would love to have a chat with Africans. If they come, I plug them in there. So you're very correct. Again, like you said, Nigeria leads, others follow. Nigeria is a big, big, big problem right now in Africa because the potential of Nigeria, just like the Congo, is not being, should we say, actualized. And as long as Nigeria is not running at 100% capacity, Africa will struggle. Nigeria is pulling back Africa. You see, Rwanda, no matter how good Rwanda runs, they're like, it's a small, in terms of percentages, right? It's 5% of 100 running. But when Nigeria runs faster, it's 60% of 100 running. So we get more pull from there. So we got to fix the big economies, right? Copy what the big economies are doing. Egypt is doing well. Rwanda is doing well. Botswana is doing well. What are they doing right there? The ease of doing business, rights, attracting foreign direct investments, fighting inflation. Look at Zambia. A few years ago, basket case, high inflation. Now look at Zambia today, low inflation, attracting investments. So you are correct that there are things that we can copy even from Africa. But I do like the fact that why I'm particularly attuned to China is that they've done what they've done locally without looking for this FDI, without selling, resources. They didn't sell a resource and then they use that resource to develop China. So what I'm trying to say with this space is this: whatever you are, whatever nation in Africa you come from, you can do it. People are poor in Africa, and we've had this story of poverty in Africa for years. So it's time to fix it with capitalism. If a communist nation can focus on capitalism with a bit of socialism and get incomes up, because that's the miracle of China. They got incomes up. And once incomes are up, then it's consumption, there's now education. People then are able to then live a life. That's really where we want to go to in Africa. We have to copy what they've done, the path we can copy. Also copy what the West is doing in terms of freedom, civil society, and all that. And then we have our own pathway forward. That's really what it is. I'm just the guy with the Twitter space, right? If you want to speak, thank you, Rosemary, for bringing us back on Even Kill. I've got Matthew on the line. Matthew, what's up? What do you want to say?
Hey, well, I just got out of a meeting, a Zoom meeting with people from Kenya, from around the world. John D. Liu, the founder of Eco Restoration Camps, was hosting it with me. And we had Filipinos, we had people from all over the world. We had over 50 people, 3 hours and 33 minutes. I'm all about regeneration, sustainability, being positive, being for the solutions. I am more African centric, although I work with any country. I worked in a non-for-profit world, been to Africa, South Africa, Zimbabwe, and Botswana. I have a lot of dear friends, especially NFT artists from Nigeria right now. So I just wanted to say, when I saw this, can be replicated in Africa, yes. I know a lot of African leaders right now that are doing things. And so we're creating a foundation that's going to help people who are local leaders. If you're a local leader and you want to do a regenerative farming school or a permaculture school or plastic cleanup or plant trees or lower pollution, we've got a team that will work with you for free if you're a good heart-centered not-for-profit. If you're a good business and you want to do good and create a circular economy or circular ecology or eco-friendly products or help the poor, the needy, we're there for you. So, I'm old, I'm 58. I've been doing this stuff for over 30 years. So we've got a lot of connections and stuff, and we're going to help transition billions of dollars. So our goal is not to go to Africa and say, hey, you need to do what we want you to do. No, our goal is to say who in Africa wants to do good things and work with local experts. And if we don't have a local expert, we get as close to a local expert as we can. One quick example, and I'll move on. My brother Christopher from Zambia has a PhD in agriculture. Tribal chiefs have given him land. He works with orphans for free. He works with the prison system. So we're educating people. I've got an adopted daughter in Uganda. We're creating free sanitation pads for village girls who don't go to school or other events because they don't have the needs that they need. It's all for free, and it's a reusable thing for up to 2 years, and we're employing people. So anyway, I'm really excited. I want to learn and listen and share with you guys, and I plan on being in Africa, and we're planning on creating a hub in Nigeria for artists, for humanitarians, philanthropists, and more eco-centric type people working on solutions.
Super. Well, good news all the way, man. You're doing a lot. I appreciate you for doing that. I love the one about the girls. Yeah, doing a lot. So any way we can help, any way you think we can help you out, maybe with the contacts or just retweeting or giving you a link, let us know, and then we're there for you. I'm not for aid. I'm for the partnerships that come out of this, right? Where you can say we have a partner in Africa and there's going to be a business case. Then you get more traction. People are more, attuned to that than saying I want to give you. So I like that you said that. Yeah. All right.
That's great. And just so you know, so we're working with Spirit of Hope, which is a registered not-for-profit. I helped fund it to start it. So for the last 4 years, me and now her husband have basically funded it. So we really haven't gone on the donation thing, and we're teaching them to make for-profit things. So you have a not-for-profit that then also combines it with a for-profit, so you don't have to rely just on donation. So yeah, if you follow me, I follow you. I mean, I'll follow you no matter what. If you're a great person, I've already followed the host. You're amazing. So I appreciate everybody in here, and I want to listen. And if I can assist you guys in any ways as well, reach out to me, because I will be in Africa. I'll be in Uganda, Kenya, South Africa, Nigeria, this year, Zimbabwe. I've got friends all over, because I worked and I
Right.
was the chairman of the board for Team 54 Project International, which was created out of Nigeria.
Super, super. Great, Matthew. God bless you all you're doing. I wish you the very, very best. Yeah, keep at it. Keep at it. All right, got Milky Way, MB Abubakar. Did I get that right? Milky Way, you're on the floor. Otherwise, I got Duke of Ikoyi. Nice name. Duke of Ikoyi, you've got the floor, so go ahead. Okay. If you're not ready, I've got El Nam Nasir. El Nam Nasir. Member.
Good evening, Mr. Khan.
Hey, Mr. Nasir, what's up? What's up? You're a member of the Chatham House. What does that mean?
Yes, Chatham House is the Royal Institute of International Affairs in London.
Okay.
So it's a think tank. It's an institution that focuses on think tank and research, a lot of issues regarding international affairs, ranging from politics, economics, and a lot of issues, other issues.
I know them. I know Chatham House. I'm just saying, what does that mean? That you work there, or what is it?
Yes, as a member, you are entitled to a lot of benefits, like accessing the materials from the library and a lot of other advantages.
Gotcha.
So as a registered member, there is a yearly subscription you make.
Okay, I hear you.
£300 also.
Excellent, go for it. So, what's in your mind?
Yeah, actually, speaking from economic perspective, I've always had this view that, particularly for African countries, I believe we are not really realistic in terms of what needs to be done, particularly when you talk of eradicating poverty. Be it a socialist or capitalist system, there are always rules that we must follow. And relating this issue to China, there is what is called a policy trilemma, which most of us will be conversant with, which implies that a country cannot be free, stable, and fast in terms of development.
Interesting.
That is one.
Interesting.
Yes, it can't be, not free, open, stable, and fast, not free, please. Open. What it means is that there is no economy that can be open and expect its development to be fast and stable at the same time. It should only take two out of these three, which happen which also happens in physical sciences. But in economic sciences and development, it is referred to as policy trilemma, that you can't take all the three. And this is what China has been doing over the years, for decades now, that has enabled it to be where it is. You see, China is not open. And when we say open, it's not just in literal sense, it is technical, meaning that your import and export, you must be very serious with it, in that you don't allow flow of goods into your country. And the main reason is that when you allow everything imported into your country, you are not going to be productive. And this is the case of Nigeria and a lot of other African countries. And going by that, I recall Donald J. Trump, when he was the president of the United States, I believe 2018, during the 73rd General Assembly of the United Nations, he said that globalization has cost the US economy $13 trillion in the last 2 decades, in just 20 years. And that they are not going to allow any trade that is not fair. And he said most of this goes to China. So the bottom line here is, for an economy like US, the president is crying that globalization, or the current globalization we are talking about, is costing the US or has cost the US economy $13 trillion in just 20 years. So when you begin to relate this to countries in Africa that we invariably import almost everything, you begin to think
Oh, you lost it. You were going somewhere there, Naim. I think you dropped off.
This is a very serious challenge. And that is why even of countries accepting everything that comes from other countries. And this has to do with the kind of models we adopt for development. When you say you are
Oh, Naim, you're hopping in and out of the audio. Let me ask you a quick question. If you can hear me, you're hopping in and out.
The standard of living of a country depends on the amount of goods and services it produces. The definition of development follows the same trend. So when we say we are eradicating poverty, we want to be like China. In essence, it means we have to be productive, and we should devise models that makes us strongly reliant on import for a lot of African countries. And for the government of Nigeria, I believe when Muhammadu Buhari came in 2015, I believe he or his administration wanted to gear us towards that. And then there was banditry in the far north, where I believe agriculture was supposed to be the goal of the government back then. And this distorted a lot of farming activities in the region. So in essence, what I'm trying to say is that if we say we are adopting any model from any country, we should be very realistic in understanding how it achieved whatever it has achieved. And back to what I said earlier, the issue of policy trilemma should be at the bottom, or should be at the top of our priorities in designing whatever policy we are making. If we say we want to achieve stability, we want to achieve stability, and we have a time frame that we are going to fast track our development, let's say 20 years, it means that we are now going to devise models that are taking us away from being open to all sorts of imports from other countries for us to achieve stability and to attain that kind of development in the shortest period of time. That means in the case of policy trilemma, we have to be fast. And that means, in the case of policy trilemma, we are going to be fast and stable, but we are not going to be open. Thank you very much.
Good point. Good points there, Naim. I appreciate the way you took us down from the policy to the practical. Very, very excellent points there. Say that again. We have to. Are you advocating more like we open up like the African Continental Free Trade Zone? We do more of that. We open up Africa to trade without tariffs, or are you advocating maybe what China did, i.e., we put the tariffs in and grow internally? Just to be clear, where do you stand on that? Naim, did you hear me? All right, super. I did want to get your clarity on that. If you are okay with the African Continental Free Trade Tariff just signed, that allow us to basically break down intra-Africa trade barriers, so that way goods can go from Nigeria all the way to, say, Togo, Ghana, Kenya, without tariffs, but more or less create an African market that is one single market that can do trade terms negotiation with, say, the EU or with China. It would be interesting to get your thoughts on that. But guys, believe it or not, to be here for 4 hours, till about 7 p.m. West African. I think we're well now into the wee hours. We're into the 27 p.m. West African time. So I want to give you guys time to go get a rest, get ready for the Monday as it is. Great topic. Thanks, Rosemary. I do take your comments. It was how can we be replicated in Africa? Yes, we talk a lot about Nigeria because most of the guys are hopped in. We're Nigerians, but I think it's the same lesson for everyone. Let me just summarize again what I personally learned and what others have done on the forum, right? The topic is about what China did right and what we can copy from them, right? I think there are things that they did that were very important. Number one was the education, where everyone was educated on the basic level. I'm talking about just really knowing how to read and write. So everyone was educated. That was because they were communists. Number two was the stability of the polity. Even if it's a democracy or not democracy, there was stability, i.e., the politics side of the equation was stable. There was no 4-year midterms. there was stability, right? So people could plan within the stability. Then there was security. So those three, the education, the stability, and the security, were non-negotiable. They were there, and everyone could more or less could then plan. Then they then focused on two key policy objectives. Number one, taxes. They reduced taxes on the agricultural side. Before the reforms in 78, China did a lot of their income from taxing farmers, taxes and levies. They took all that out. They also then reformed the Land Use Act in China, allowing the Chinese to lease out excess land that they were not using for profit, which they could keep and they could spend on other things. When they did this policy, they then were able to say, listen, we are going now to then invest in agriculture. We would increase the productivity, as it were, of the farming network in China. We increase the productivity of the farms. We will then increase the wealth of the farmers at the rural level. And it was this increase in productivity at the rural level that increased the wealth generation at that basic unit level that then allowed China to then inflow resources, capital, mechanization at the rural level, creating wealth, and that's where the whole journey started from. I've been deliberate to just stay here because all these things we've mentioned does not need FDIs, does not need foreign capital, does not need exports of, say, crude oil. All it needs is policy direction from the population, from the leadership, and the population then taking ownership and implementing, which means that every nation in Africa could do this. There is nothing here that is controversial in educating people, right? In giving people land rights, in giving people security, in reducing taxes, in allowing people to sell or to lease excess capital that they don't need. That's actually where I'm going to. So if we simply did this across Africa, then we set ourselves up to then say, okay, from this, should we then do an export-led economy like China did, or should we do a trade or import or whatever, IT, whatever you then want to do? But this very business of giving power to the people at the very, very local level, creating wealth from what everyone does. 70% of the Chinese then were farmers, so they focused on what would have the greatest impact. I think that is what Africa should copy. Going forward, we can then do the other ones, but those basic things, security, low taxes, education, land reform, that's where we're not getting it right. And I think if we adopt that, we're onto something. So, guys, thanks for everyone that has spoken. This recorded on Twitter. It's also going to be recorded on the podcast. If you want to get the recording, the podcast is going to be, if you go to my handle, you see the podcast address there. It's on Spotify, Amazon, Google Podcasts, all podcast links. It's going to be there. In case you want to do a repeat and listen to what we said, it's going to be there. Thank you all for tuning in. We'll be here again next Saturday, or I think it's going to be Sunday. We alternate between Saturdays and Sunday. And I hope you guys will join us then. You guys have a great rest of your weekend. Thank you all, and bye.